All right, welcome to the February 9th, 2021 Norfolk Planning Board meeting. As a preliminary matter, my name is Walter Byron. I'm the Planning Board Chair. And with us this evening, we have John Weddleton, a member, Gary Searle, a member, and two other members who will be with us later. We hope one is Aaron Hunt, which we anticipate arriving in the vicinity of 7:45. And Chad Peck, whom we anticipate arriving in the vicinity of 9 p.m. Also with us this evening, we have our town planner, Richard McCarthy, and our administrator, Betsy Fujol. So this open meeting of the planning board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of the emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a public accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order is posted on the town's website and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This will be a meeting that will feature public comment. For this meeting of the planning board, we are convening via the Zoom application as posted on the town website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that all other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Finally, each vote taken this evening will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, now, next item on the agenda is the public hearing notice for 218 Dedham Street freestanding sign. Gary, will you please read that into the record?
Yes. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass General Law, Section 40A, and the Norfolk zoning bylaws, Section F9B1C4. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 at 7:15 relative to a special permit application to allow a 70-inch by 96-inch freestanding sign at 218 Dedham Street in Norfolk, Mass. The site is located in the C1 on-highway zoning district, reference Assessors Map 19, Block 69, Lot 23. This application and plans are available for public inspection on the Town of Norfolk website, www.norfolk.mass.us, or call the planning board office to schedule an appointment.
Thank you, Gary. Rich, we will just postpone that until 7:45 or thereabouts.
Yep.
Also, another item that was first on our agenda is to vote to appoint an associate member. Again, I wish to hold that until Aaron appears so that we have 4 people who will be able to vote on that. Let's see, it's 7:20. All right, let's reach down into new old business and discuss the request to release Lot 4 Norway Farm subdivision. Please, Rich, go ahead and explain that for us.
Sure. As you remember, the planning board issued a special permit under the affordable housing bylaw for a payment in lieu of creation of an on-site or off-site affordable housing unit. The town received the first of 3 $60,000 payments from the development. The money has been provided to the town, who was then given to the Norfolk Affordable Housing Trust. So this request this evening is to release the covenant. If you remember, when it was approved, you had placed a covenant as additional surety to make sure that the town received payment as the development progressed. So we've already received two $25,000 payments, and this is the first of three $60,000 payments.
All right, so the payments are up to schedule, and is there any reason to not release this lot that you can think of?
No, he's fulfilled his obligation thus far.
Is the road all bonded,
Yes, the road's all.
fully bonded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, any questions?
None.
All right, then the chair will entertain a motion to release lot number 4 of Norway Farms.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
All right,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Mr. Weddleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
chair votes aye. All right. Um, Let's see, next item, I think, should be road acceptance. You want to talk to that, please, Rich?
Sure. So we have up for the spring of Frederickson Road, the portion of which was completed this past November, as well as the Oakview Trail as well, that was finished this past November from Mr. Bonvy, did both of those.
Yep.
So it's right now, it'd be recommended to go to town meeting as a placeholder. We will be receiving the as-built plans, the deeds, and it'll come back to the planning board for a recommendation. But tonight is just to make the planning board aware that it's going to be proceeding through the process for acceptance as a public road. Hampton Road is another one that was recently completed last fall, which Scott Caldwell's petitioning to have that road accepted as a public way. And then Meeting House Road and Liberty Lane, that's on the list. The town had previously voted to accept them, but there was a title issue with both of those streets. So the approach now is to move forward with them as acceptance as public roads. However, it would be through an eminent domain taking to acquire title to both roads to clean up the title issues. So what'll happen is, again, the select board will have to hold a hearing on that, not probably in the March timeframe, somewhere around there. They'll go back to the planning board for a referral for recommendation, but I just want to let the board know that that's coming. And there's two discussion with town council this morning. It's not on this list, but it appears that Canterbury Lane and Surrey Lane could very well be added to the list of two roads to move forward for public acceptance, similar through a taking process to clear up title issues with those as well.
Would you repeat those two names?
It's Canterbury Lane or Road, I'm trying to remember.
It's off Main Street there, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
And what's the other?
And then Surrey Lane, which is off of Canterbury.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Rich, is the language for the easements on Meeting House and Liberty Lane in our hands?
The easements,
Well, you got a bunch of things on private property. You've got a pumping station, you've got a drainage system.
yeah, as far as the sewer goes, you mean?
Well, there's a pumping station and there's the drainage on Liberty Lane that's on a private lot. Do we have easements to maintain those?
That's what I have to check through with town council's part.
I know. My other comment was, we spoke about this before. There's no as-built on that property. Looking down the road, if some of that roadway is on private property, we have a nightmare. I think as a minimum, we should have a quick survey done to make sure that the roadway is in the right of way and we don't have a problem down the road with a landowner saying, you've got the road on my property, get it off. I think that's very important. We're accepting something without an as-built to boot. So we'll be responsible in theory for anything that is built wrong or not done. And that's a risk as itself. But on top of that, I think we should at least make sure that these things are in the right spot. And it's not a real big survey deal. I would get the team that did the survey work initially and just make sure that that's all in the right spot on town land.
Yeah, I will speak to DPW about getting an as-built plan done for both.
Again, just to make sure nothing's on private property.
Going back in time, was it the town that built those roads or was it a private developer that built those roads?
I believe a private developer.
Private developer, okay. And we can't reach back and get some as-bills from that individual or that company?
So the town ended up taking over, finishing those roads. So that the last two that we're talking about, Meeting
Yeah.
House.
And Liberty, yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
So what they do, go out of business?
No, they're
I made a deal with them to finalize the whole project, and we got a little bit of money and we're responsible for the balance of everything else, basically.
I got you. Okay, all right. So do you require any motions of us this evening for those roads?
no, it's just for informational purposes tonight.
Okay, okay, I got it. Let's see, so we got 2 minutes here. Gary, why don't you take care of the minutes of meeting issue?
I will make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as amended from the planning board meeting on January 12th, 2021.
We have a second. All right, all in favor, say aye. Mr. Weddleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
chair votes aye.
I will make another motion to accept the meeting minutes from the planning board's meeting on January 26th, 2021 as amended.
We have a second, Mr.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Mr. Weddleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So that takes care of that one. All right, now it's 7:30. And Rich, the next item on our agenda at 7:30 is Redwood Circle, Noon Hill Acres subdivision.
Yeah, I think we can tackle that. As just a little bit of background from the last meeting, we had Hugo DiMartino is the contractor that Mr. Dalzell had informed the board was going to do the subdivision completion on the construction end of it. DPW and we had set up a site walk on the 27th of January, which ended up getting postponed because of snow. So in the meantime, we're waiting to reschedule to do the site walk. But in between that, the board did get a contract that came in from Mr. DiMartino to Mr. Dalzell to finish the subdivision. So we would say we're heading in the right direction, even a little bit further, with Mr. Dalzell moving to complete the subdivision on his own. So for this evening's meeting, I would just recommend that we recommend to the board to continue it to March, this matter. And then weather permitting, maybe we can get out and do that site walk before the meeting in March with Mr. DiMartino, just to go over things. So really, the purpose of doing a site walk was to take a look at the conditions out there and see what things need to be as far as maybe the repairs, those kind of things, to see how they've held up. So that was which is pretty typical.
Yeah, we have both a landscaping contract dated January 7th, and now we have the finished roadwork contract dated yesterday, actually, dated yesterday.
Yeah. We did receive a landscape plan from the neighbors on a alternative
Yep.
scheme for landscaping, which I'll share with Mr. Dalzell, because he did, I think, he did indicate willingness to work with the neighbors on an alternate landscaping plan. He just didn't want to hire their particular landscaper, but the plan stands on itself, I think, as far as what's being suggested. So
Right. Okay, so any questions from board members on that?
No, it looks good. The contract looks complete and Hugo's done a lot of work for the town. I'm sure he can finish this up pretty quickly and do a good job.
Yep. All right, so Gary?
Would we expect everybody to be at the next meeting, Rich? I know Mr. Dalzell had to go out of town for this meeting, so he couldn't be here.
yeah, I think we need to, as we get closer, see if he needs to be there or not. Let's.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Chair will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on Redwood Circle Noon Hill Acre subdivision until our meeting in March, which is on March, what? March. Looks like March 9th.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right,
Out of time?
and let's say 7:30 again. All right, so all in favor, Mr. Weddleton, Mr. Searle,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, so we postponed, continued rather, that until March. Let's see, next item, I think, would be to, let's see.
Want to talk about the estate lot up of Pondview Road and Turner Street?
Yeah, I think we could do that, sure. Rich, why don't you take us through that?
Sure. So, Mr. Hall has, I'm going to put the plan up on the screen so as I
Yep.
probably makes sense what we're talking about. So, start the slideshow. Hold on a second. Let's go to the screen share. Okay, can you see the plan on the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So if you look to the right of the plan off of Turner Street, this is the existing house from Mr. and Mrs. Hall. This entire parcel is their lot or property. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I just want to zoom in. Maybe I can zoom in. Oops, sorry. Maybe I can't zoom in. So it's a little hard for me to read, but the existing house under this proposal will be 1.72 feet. So the reason why I have them before you tonight to discuss informally is that under the estate lot provision, you need to have 110,000 square feet of contiguous upland. So if you see on this plan, this wetland bisects this lot here, which they like to create as an estate lot. So you have 91,000 square feet of contiguous upland here, and then another 86,000 there. So in order to be able to get an estate lot, they would have to petition the Zoning Board of Appeals for a dimensional variance for less than that contiguous 110,000 square feet. So what I suggest is that informally, and I talked to the planning board, because even if, for example, they were successful in getting a variance and they came back to the planning board is not bound by the decision of the ZBA. You could deny the estate lot on its own, and therefore, the estate lot would not go forward. It wouldn't be created. So if there's a strong thought from the board which way you would think about this, that was the purpose of the meeting. And I would say, as I spoke to Jim Nerva and then I spoke to Mr. Hall, is ultimately it's a planning board decision. So, you know, while I have thoughts and opinions, it's really the board's decision and they would be the one voting. So
Rich, if I could ask, is Jim here? Who's the engineer?
yeah, Jim Nerva is on.
Because the lot as it is, it looks like it certainly would be able to get a hardship variance based on the lot configuration. My question is, where is, there's wetland and buffer zones all through the middle. Where is the house and the driveway gonna be situated?
Let's take yourself off mute, Jim. Or why he's doing that.
Because Rich,
There you go. Go ahead.
That's better.
Yeah,
Jim, where is the driveway going and where's the house gonna be situated? I'm assuming the lot line is this line here that connects the,
yeah. So this,
at the right angle.
right. So this would be the,
Yes.
that would be the new lot line, rear lot line
So where would the driveway be in the house?
Yeah, where were they? Right.
off of
We're gonna
Pondview
come-
Road.
Come off of Pondview Road, that end of it, you know, we're gonna come off of Pondview Road. He has a 57.13 access off of the end of Pondview Road. So that's where we are proposing the estate lot to come off of. And the house would be on the west side of the wetland, you know.
So there's, what'd you say, 91,000 square feet of space here in the uplands on that side?
Continuous upland, 91,381, yes.
Okay. So in order to get the 100,000 minimum, you'd have to include certain portion of the wetland. I guess you'd just make the whole back lot the estate lot, presumably, right? The whole thing.
Is Pondview Road is a dead end, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes.
How far, is there an intersection there that goes into Christina Estates off of Pondview?
Yes, it is. It's about 600 feet down
Well,
to the west.
the issue you got then is you're creating a cul-de-sac that's more than 500 feet, aren't you? Which is against our bylaws.
That's right. That's why I would like to create an estate lot with a 50-foot frontage, you know, with 91, you know, all I have is 91,381 square feet of continuous.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the driveway curb cut off of Pondview makes Pondview more than a 500-foot cul-de-sac. A 500-foot road, yeah.
Isn't it already more than 500 feet, John?
You'd count it from the intersection where it goes into Christina Estates,
Yeah,
the end of Pondview, and Pondview is a dead end.
yeah.
So the cul-de-sac would count from the intersection of where it goes into Christina, which is why I asked them the
Yeah.
distance between that and Pondview. That would be technically the dead end length. And that length is more than the 500 feet, which we don't allow.
But it's already in existence.
Existing lot.
I mean, that length of cul-de-sac is already in existence. The turnaround you can see right here at the end.
We're not creating any more roadway.
Yeah, the roadway exists.
Where is the last house on Pondview?
Well, we need to get a different map up there, Rich, to take
Yeah.
a look at that.
Hold on, I can, let me go to.
So basically, Walter, if the last house on Pondview is under 500 feet, that would be one thing, because then you'd be making a street more than the 500-foot limit that we have. And the second question would be, and I'm not saying either way, and the second question would be, we already have a non-conforming roadway. Are we gonna put another house on that non-conforming roadway? That would be the questions as far as this lot goes, because we
Yeah.
don't allow
Yeah,
anything on a road that's more than 500 feet.
yeah.
Do you have a pond view sketch, Jim? Or Rich?
Yeah,
Here,
right.
here it is here. Okay. So what you're talking about, Rich, is right at the, whoops, you've gone again. Right at the end there on that,
Right here.
right there. Yeah, right. So you've got houses all the way down Pondview.
In that case, Walter, I would say that I wouldn't have a problem with that because Pondview was pre-existing, I believe, before we had that rule.
Yeah,
Pondview
Yep.
must have been there for what, 40, 50 years?
been there a long time. I don't know how long.
Yeah, so I don't think that giving them access where it's already that linked anyway would add anything more to being in non-conformance personally.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I agree with you.
So that house at the end there, John, says 1972.
Yeah, that was before our rules. So basically, yeah, looking at the whole layout of the roadway, Rich, I don't have any problem with him
Okay.
if he gets permitted to put a lot there at the end of that cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Yeah, and no, I appreciate that. I mean, that was kind of the whole purpose, to be able to, I didn't want to have them, essentially go to ZBA and, maybe get the variance and then come back and the board's like, no. I mean, there's no guarantee, but at least it gives them a fair idea, right?
yeah. So I think based on that discussion, you'd get a favorable response from the planning board if you get that variance from ZBA.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
See. So let's see Aaron yet.
Are we sure our other members are coming?
We sure hope so. Aaron's due any minute if he's true to what he said.
I actually called him this afternoon at 3:30 just to touch base to be sure.
And,
He
and?
did say yes, he was. So,
okay, so we should see him shortly then.
yeah. Well, Walter, you have a good joke. You want to tell your joke?
No, I only have bad jokes, actually.
No, it's clean. It was perfectly appropriate. I mean,
Okay, well, what kind of kind of eggs does an evil hen lay?
I don't know what.
Deviled eggs.
See?
I told you it was bad. All right. No more jokes, please. All right, let's see. What's next that we can,
Hey, how about the town meeting report? You think the three of us?
What's my report?
we did that already while we were waiting for you.
Okay.
You?
All right, fair enough.
You
All right.
want to talk a little bit about the town center wastewater study?
Sure, yeah. So this Thursday, February 11th, I've got a Zoom meeting set up with Wilbert and Kern and the property owners. Might as well go to the map, right? Probably be helpful. Let's see, so. Main Street. Hold on a second. Just gonna zoom in here and then all right, so you can see the screen, right?
Yep.
All right, so what we've been working towards with the wastewater study for Norfolk Center is a small, I'll call it first phase, which would start from 156 Main Street right here, Independence Drive, and head east down to the fire station, which will also include Rockwood Road up to the rail line. So I have a meeting set up with all those property owners to discuss, really from where the project started, the analysis of the existing wastewater treatment plant, because that was part of the study, to take a look and see if that could be expanded or not and what condition that was in. We'll go over that with them, as well as just explaining the property owners who have existing capacity that they're paying for, just as far as the background goes. And then discuss this sewer expansion, which is being designed to be expandable over time, between the sewer line that would go in the street as far as the plant itself. And then the project, or the sewer expansion, is really based on two components from a financial standpoint. One is the betterments, and then grants, grant funding that would be sought from the state to help build the plant. And also, so it would help actually building the plant, the fields, the lines, et cetera. That would be something that would come from between those two funding sources. The first step, and small step, is the interest. And they have expressed interest before, but we're getting a little bit closer to having numbers. And so we want to get a sense of that too, because, without the betterment, it's not, well, actually both funding sources, but particularly the betterment, it's probably not going to proceed forward. And discuss the option of, and what's being proposed is a new plant versus working with the existing plant. Long view would be hopefully to, if the new plant was built, eventually take the old plant offline and then decommission that one, and then have the new, the existing users that are going to that plant up on top of the hill meeting house into the new plant. And the bigger reasoning for this particular approach, as well, is it's quite a web, if you will. The agreements and how all the sewer was created between the condos up on top of the hill and the property that is Stop and Shop, which is 9 Liberty Lane, and then 6 and 8 Liberty Lane, and then also Walgreens and Silla's, along, as well as the therapy center. It's not, from a transition standpoint, it's pretty much impractical to try to go into that plant the way the sewer allocations were divvied up.
So after that meeting, what's the next step?
So the next step is to give you, the planning board and the public, a full presentation on the 25th of February.
Yep.
And we'll talk in greater detail. The engineers will talk more to the specifics than I'm just sharing right now, but also have at least the feedback of the property owners. And then I'm inviting the property owners on Thursday to come to the meeting on February 25th, because if they are very much interested, there need to be a big vocal part of that to be able to advocate for that sewer project to move forward.
Right.
And then hypothetically, I suppose, if everybody's really super supportive of it, the next step would be to work towards creating a sewer district and putting, the betterment, the mechanism, get that more or less teed up, ready to go, along with trying to get design money to build, because we will need design money to go after grant money. So that's.
But the sewer district definition, et cetera, would be something we would bring forward to the fall town meeting, presumably?
The fall, yeah, the fall.
Yeah,
town.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, questions from board member?
Questions?
Okay, well, then we'll see it on the 25th. And feel free to send us an email as to how the meeting this coming Thursday works out, Rich.
Rich, there's no benefit to trying to maintain the old system with a new system to get even more capacity. The old system is just too old.
No, no, I don't want to say that. No, actually, the existing plant is in pretty good shape. So that could be, as far as, transitioning over, that might be way down the road. So right now, it's in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been maintained by the town and it is, so it is in good shape.
Okay. Sounded like you were taking one offline and putting the other one online.
No, yeah, that's more of a down the road.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll still be alive at that point, but I don't know. That's
Yeah.
give you, I'm still young, so just saying,
Yeah.
it's out there.
We don't doubt you. You're among friends.
Yeah. So I don't see Aaron yet.
No, I don't either.
So you know what? I'm just thinking, if Mr. Chairman, if you want, we could talk about 89 Pond Street and 206. I mean, I know it's not 8:15 yet, but
It's not a public hearing. We can still talk about it.
Yep.
yeah, why don't we do that? Because I see Mr. Gibson's on and did Jim stay with us or did he?
I'm here.
Okay, Jim's with us as well. So if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead with that one, Rich.
Okay, so two things. There was an F11 determination made that I forwarded to the board relative to 206 Dedham Street, where Safe Coalition went in and they're operating well. It's worked out very well. And then there was another F11 determination as far as 89 Pond Street. And I'll actually, you know what? Let me go. I'll share. Go back to the. I'm going to share my screen share. So. It's probably easier to. Can you see this screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's 89 Pond Street. Here's 206 Dedham Street. Mr. Gibson owns both. He's on the call with us tonight. So going out and do the F11, which includes walking the site with the property owner, discover that there's a connection between 206 Dedham over to 89 Pond Street. Further discussion, Mr. Gibson, the rear garage was being utilized by a landscape business, which within the C1 on highway, which this property is entirely within the C1 on highway, is not a permissible use. So it was issued a letter by the building department to cease that use of the property. And Mr. Gibson's in the process of evicting that tenant to get them out. And so for tonight's discussion is a little bit more related to 206 Dedham Street, which again, it was a modification of the site that didn't occur with any site plan approval. The site was approved quite a long time ago now, at this point, back in the late 80s.
What was modified? What was modified?
So if you see here, I'll go to this next slide. It's a little hard to read, but so this is the as-built plan that was done in 1988. And you really have to look carefully, but this is 89 Pond Street here.
Yeah.
There's parking spaces along the back, and there was a buffer between this and the 89 Pond Street. And so access became through. So it was altered, the parking layout and the vehicles passed between the two
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
So this should have been just closed off of parking spaces there. So the discussion, Mr. Gibson, he'll speak in a couple moments would be to restore 206 Dedham Street back to the original approval, not having access between the two properties. I think Mr. Gibson has some potential people interested in 89 Pond Street, which I suspect, don't need to go to 206 Dedham Street. And right now, 89 Pond Street is a single family home. So, you had a business and then a residence within the C1. So the simple approach is just restore 206 with a connection to the next door, and then come in when he has his potential tenant for 89 Pond Street for site plan approval. And then
Okay.
be done with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the discussion a little bit tonight is more of a timing thing.
Yeah.
He's got a pending violation there with the zoning enforcement officers. So so I want to talk about timing and then see what the board thinks. So I'll let Mr. Gibson, speak now just to so you can hear his thoughts.
Sure.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, let me see. Yes, my whole intention is to get a tenant for 89 Pond. I've had a couple of people of interest. I had two or three people that want to put a restaurant there, but with the coronavirus going on, they've backed down. But somebody's actually came back and said that they'd be interested. Or some other, I'd market it to accommodate whatever is allowed in C1 district. Just a general note is that if you've been out at that site, the garage that's in the back is like 35 feet below the house in the front. So when I came and I built that lot, the guy was running a car repair shop in the back, and he was accessing through my property since like 1981. And then I told him, yeah, you could still keep accessing through my property as long as I could park my equipment, because I have a lot of heavy equipment. If I could park my equipment there, we'd work a fair swap. And in the interim, he ended up having a heart attack and he died. He died in the building.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And then the wife wanted to just leave it as it was, just leave it there for like 9 years, not touched. Just like the day he died, the wrenches, the car, everything, nobody was allowed inside, just stayed. And then she came to me, she says, well, I want to get rid of it. I want to get the car out. Can I bring it through the property? And are you interested in buying? And that's how that happened. So I've been running the business there since 1985 for my construction company.
Right.
On that lot. Because he had no access. He had no access from the house. He was always using the property in the front.
So Mr. McCarthy has made a proposition to you that you restore 206 the way it was, cut off that access to that garage from 206. And then when you get your tenant for 89, come back with a site plan for that, whatever it is, restaurant or whatever it is that you want to go in there.
Yes, yeah.
Are you okay? Are you okay with that proposal?
Yeah, yes. I'd like to have time to, I'd like to have till like June, in the middle of June to get everything done. All the landscaping back, the curb.
Yeah.
Everything's so backed up, so slow with the corona, the weather. If I
Yep.
say April and then it's still cold in April, then I'm fighting to do it in May, but I figured the second week in June, everything would be completely done, growing grass. You know,
Well, I think that's not an unreasonable request. Just, I don't want to run afoul of the zoning enforcement officer, whatever deadlines he may have given you. So, so make sure that we're not working at cross purposes here.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, I agree. I think the next step then would be to communicate with Mr. Bullock as far as the plan of attack and putting the time frame in, because to make sure that he's comfortable with that as well. So the violation, because like I said, there is a violation in place,
Yeah,
to remediate it and then go forward. So you actually wouldn't be doing a site plan modification the way you restore it back to the way the original approval was.
yes.
yeah, 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 right.
Is that, so I think my suggestion is they talk to Bob either tomorrow or the day after, and then I could report back to the planning board at the next meeting of the outcome.
Okay,
Does that make sense from the board standpoint?
yep, sounds good to me. Gary, you okay with that?
Sure, sounds great.
Hello, Aaron.
Hello, apologies for the late arrival.
Well, good to see you. All right, so Mr. Gibson, sounds like we've got a plan. You've got a plan, and I think you'll get the board's agreement to the June date, just as long as we don't get cross purposes with Mr. Bullock, that's all.
All right, sounds great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now that we have a fourth member, we can address some of these other points that we've been waiting on. Let's begin with the vote to appoint an associate member. Now, we had two candidates come in front of us last meeting, Chris Montfort and Paul Burns. And we heard from each of them as to why they'd like to be the associate member. And now we need to take a vote on which of those two gentlemen we'd like to recommend for appointment to the vote to be a associate member, and also recommend to the select board for that joint appointment. So let's take a roll call vote, and I suggest what you do is you put forth the name of the candidate that you support, and then we'll see where the votes tally up. So let's begin with Mr. Weddleton.
I actually like both folks, and I'm happy they're both offering to volunteer their time. And I think it was your mention, Walter, about the ZBA having an opening, which would be a nice
Right.
choice for the other one. But
Yep.
I think based on the backgrounds, I think that Chris may be a little bit better fit than the other gentleman. And he came to the board for applying for a different reason, where the other gentleman had the issue of the sidewalks on Union Street, which is an
Right.
issue,
Right.
but it was a more pointed reason rather than just generally wanting to be a part. And I
Sure.
do like the fact that he's looked at plans, and
Right.
anytime you've done that, at least that would be a help. So again, both great guys. I'm happy they volunteered, but I think in this case, I would give Chris my nod.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, so I'll second what John says. I'm all for volunteerism, and I appreciate anybody that steps forward and wants to join our board. But I as well would vote for Chris.
Chris. Aaron?
Keep the train running. Go with Chris.
Well, interestingly enough, the chair favors Chris as well over Paul. And I would echo what you've all said about being thankful for people who are willing to stand up and volunteer. All these boards and commissions in town run on volunteers. And if we don't get volunteers, the business of the town grinds to a halt. So Chris, congratulations. And we will forward your name to the select board, and the select board will vote presumably at their next meeting. And hopefully we will get a favorable vote from them, and then you will become our associate member.
Awesome. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Aaron, do you wish to make any further announcements tonight?
Not yet, Walter.
Okay, very good. All right, so we covered that item.
We can go back to 218 Dedham Street.
Yeah, that's the next item, but special permit for 218 Dedham Street to allow a 70-inch by 96 inch freestanding sign. We've read the notice of public hearing into the record, and now why don't you go ahead and explain what's proposed, Rich?
Sure. So Mr. Lima is on the line to answer questions. He requests to put up a new freestanding sign at 218 Dedham Street to advertise Novato's restaurant, what's already there, and his new business venture, which is in the same building right next door where he had his function hall with the market. And with a new business, what he proposes to do is take down the existing freestanding sign and put up a new one. And the sign is allowed within the dimension for which he's applied for via special permit through the planning board. As part of that sign, they add a little bit of a section so that way if there's things he wants to advertise like specials or anything like that, there's a little bit additional space for that purpose as well. And I think
Can you put up the drawing that we got?
Yeah, let me just let's see. I'll go to. Yep, just,
While Rich is doing that, let me just say that the section of the bylaws that are being referenced is F9B1C4. If you want to dig out your book, F9B1C4.
So this would be a multi-business sign, correct?
Correct, yeah.
where's my,
And according to that section, it's up to 100 square feet is allowed by special permit. And what is being proposed is 46.7 square feet.
is it in the? That's a question for you. Is it in what folder is it the sign in?
What folder?
Yeah, file folder.
Rich, if you go to special permits,
Special permits. Okay. My
Betsy, that was the cat's ass.
so embarrassing.
Was that a signal?
I'll never.
So of the total square footage, Rich, is it divided up business by business that's in the building? So there was 100 square foot maximum or something? I can't seem to find it right now, but, and then there was only so much per business in the building, or did I misinterpret that?
hold on a second. Let me show you. You'll see. Screen share.
Gary, it's on page 66 of your book.
Yeah, can you see it on the screen?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
There you go.
got it.
So they're really,
Yeah.
essentially identical.
Yep.
In size, and then this, like I said, this will act as space so that if you want to put some advertising as far as specials go or anything like that.
Sure.
Either way, that provides that space. So
Okay.
this is a pretty exciting opportunity for the town of Norfolk here. I think, well, not to, hopefully the board support the local business, right? This is
Yeah. Yeah, the proposal certainly fits within the allowed bylaw, and I'm happy to lend my support to it.
Mhm.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the freestanding sign.
Well,
Before
first
that,
we wanna-
can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the filing fee for the special permit?
$750.
I'd like to make a motion that we waive the filing fee, being that Mr. Leamer has done so much volunteer work and contributions to the town. And it's amazing that he's still able to stay in business after this past year. And I know the select board has helped out in other ways, and I'd like to offer the help from the planning board, at least my own perspective, that we waive that $750 fee, if anybody else is with me.
I would vote for that as well.
Well, that's an interesting proposition. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
We have a second. I'm sorry?
Can we make that kind of a recommendation?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Yeah, that's within our purview.
Yeah, before you do that, if you don't mind, just procedurally, either, take public comment and close the hearing and then vote on it, just.
Yeah, well, let's keep ourselves honest. If you're recommending we do that, then we will ask for comments from the public.
Yep. There isn't any, but.
Hearing none, then recommend that the,
I'm sorry, guys. I just unmuted. Can I public comment real quick?
certainly,
Jonathan Cox, 3 Mountain Rock Lane. Just as a local business owner, restaurant owner in town, just want to wish Alex and Jen the best of luck. I know this year has been a challenge, and Alex has had some extra obstacles. So I look forward to visiting the shop and the restaurant as always, and just wish them the best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, Mr. Whittleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay, so now we can entertain a motion to waive the filing fee.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of waiving the filing fee, Mr. Whittleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
chair votes aye. All right, so that'll help you along a little bit. All right, now we need a motion to approve the freestanding sign as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, Mr. Whittleton,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your time. Thank you for removing the feed. I'm really grateful for that, and I'm very excited for the new business and be able to support Norfolk.
Good.
Good
Good.
luck.
Good luck,
Good
sir.
luck.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
best of luck.
All right.
Okay, let's see, what's next here?
So
We probably ought to just discuss the select board policy suite before we get to B1, because John will be leaving us. We also want to discuss zoning amendments. So let's do zoning amendments first.
Sure. So I'm going to screen share with the board just to. So kind of a little bit of a, excuse me, full circle on the, to a degree, on F5 accessory buildings. Hold on a second as I get the up to talk first. Okay, so wait a minute. No. Okay, I'll start here. So this start with the building department coming to me to just to clean up the accessory buildings, section F5A, to what was missing in there, it didn't say required front yard. So that's where it originated from, to clean up. In the process, we dove in a little bit deeper, and you had several different proposals. And one of them was special permit to allow between the front property line to the plane, essentially the front of a house. And then I got some further feedback from the building department to give consideration to continue what was interpreted before, is that from the front yard setback to the front edge of a house, that somebody could put an accessory structure there, provided it met the setback from the side as well, from the height of the building. But so in addition to that, from Mr. Weeder from the Zoning Board of Appeals, having seen people, it's not me, but people struggle with where you have a much smaller lot that's tighter, and their topography might be an issue, to allow somebody to be able to apply for a special permit for accessory building in the front yard. So what I proposed, or the last proposal to you, was to really get back to the original intent was, again, front yard, not within the required front yard, except by special permit, and then between the front yard setback and the front edge of the house would be essentially by right. So the first diagram, or the diagram on the screen, is which is within the zoning bylaws, just which illustrates the setbacks for lots. And so you can see at least what denotes side yards, front yards, and then these through lots, which have two front yards, similarly to a corner lot. So I just wanted to show you that. And then some examples of what we were talking about with the structures. Why do I have this one here? This is not.
Why do you want to let somebody put a shed in front of their house without a permit, a special permit? I thought that's what we were trying to get against before.
So it's the accessory structure, right? So,
Well, that could be a shed, that could be a carport.
yeah.
Yeah, the idea was to put it under a special permit, as I understood it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many cases you got to cover. Special permit covers it.
ZBA would issue the special permit.
Yeah. And for the houses we have in town that is only set back 25 feet from the road, and obviously the front yard setback are 50 feet would be a problem if they're pre-existing non-condition. You could have something in there to have a special permit, but at least the shed should be behind the front plane of the house. So if you've got something that's only set back 25 feet from the road because it's a pre-existing non-conforming, why would you want to let somebody put something 10 feet in front of the roadway? I mean, don't you think it should at least be behind the plane of the house, whether that plane be 20 feet off the street or 30 feet off the street?
I'd rather give the ZBA the option to look at each situation specifically and let them make the decision, John, because you can't really legislate, everything.
I agree. But at least by special permit, somebody's legislating it so that somebody doesn't have a problem with their neighbor and goes and buys a $1,200 shed and sticks it on blocks in the front yard.
Yeah.
But isn't that what Rich has written here? I mean,
Yeah.
No, he says you can put something between the front yard setback and the house without a permit, a special permit.
No special permit. Right.
That's not what I'm reading. Maybe I'm reading the wrong thing.
No, that is, Aaron, just, so
Right.
between the zero, so the front property line and the 50-foot setback, somebody would have to seek a special permit. From 50 feet back to the front edge of the house, they just do it as they would today, as way is interpreted.
Well, not to correct you, but in the first 50 feet, but you're calling it front yard, the terminology front setback is actually a little bit more legal. You can't put anything there by special permit or not. It's a no build zone. So that's out anyway by law. So now we're talking about from the front yard setback, would it be 50 feet or whatever, to the plane of the house. And what this language says is you can put a shed there. You can put 3 sheds there. You can put 2 carports there.
So yes, today you can't put anything between the front yard setback and 50 feet. The idea, the prevailing thought was to at least allow for that, because there are situations where the lots are much smaller, they're tighter, and that may be where somebody needs to put an accessory.
Oh, exactly, by special permit. Then
By
somebody
special
could look at
permit,
it to see.
Yeah,
Right, right.
agreed. Okay.
But I agree, but
Right here.
the next layer from the setback to the front of the house, the thought was, why put somebody through a special permit just for that? Because there are many instances, which I'm showing you, where the house is way off the street and you go to put a garage in the front of your house, which makes sense, you got to go for a special permit.
Well,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be accounting for all the things that really could be done to circumvent what our intent is, which is zoning, basically. And you can have a bunch of people, for whatever reason, put things to screw their neighborhood in the front yard. I mean, and it's pretty easy to do. I thought that's the thing we were talking about before, to try to get around so we could protect that.
Well, the first part was to clarify what was front yard. So because the existing bylaw didn't even require front yard. So
Sure,
then,
exactly, yeah.
So then
You keep calling it front yard, but it's the front setback.
right. So with this change, it would add in setback. So that way we know we're talking about the required front yard setback. So
All right,
that,
now wait a minute. What, will you please read the language of what is being proposed?
sure. Hold on a minute. Let me,
Because we've had several versions and I'm kind of like Aaron, I'm lost as to what the current
We
language is.
don't need, the first one was written ambiguously, and correcting that is one thing, because basically, like I said, in the front setback, nothing can be built there. I mean, technically, you can't even put a kid's ice skating portable rink there, although some people in town have it. Nothing can go in the front setback that's permanent.
Unless they got a special permit.
No, you can't get a special permit to put something in the front yard setback. You can't do that. That's against zoning. That's what we're getting at. We're getting at the people that are set back more than the 50 feet, if that is the front setback in that middle area.
right.
We want to stop someone from sticking something there unless there is a special permit that oversees it.
Right. So right now you can't put anything correct. So the enforcement of the bylaw has been from the front property line to the front yard, to the required front yard setback, which is 50 feet. You can't put an accessory building in at all. It's a no build zone.
Well, that's not what this language says.
Yeah, that doesn't have to be that's in the setback bylaw. That's got nothing to do with this. Don't forget, if your house is set back 80 feet and you want to put something outside of the front setback, back 60 feet, what if you put that to the side yard of your house, right near the neighbor, so he could see it, although it wouldn't be in your way? So you're interfering with the neighbor's view and not as much your view.
So
Well, the way this is written, an accessory building will be allowed between the front property line and the required front yard setback by
Right.
special permit from the ZBA. That's what it says. So it says from the street to, from the street to the setback line, you can put something in there if you get a special permit from the ZBA.
Right, that's part of the proposal.
Well, now John says you can't do that.
You can do anything if you get permission from the
An
ZBA.
accessory building will be allowed between the front property line and the front yard setback. That doesn't even have to be there. That's zoning. That's the front setback. You can't build it. You could price that language out. You can't do that. Special permit, nothing. You could be the mayor. You can't do that. So that's not even needed there. You can't build in the front setback. And that's what that second paragraph is. The other one is giving it by right to put it between the end of the front setback and the plane of the house, which is the front yard.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to legislate. And this just lets you do it.
So there's two parts to this, what's on the screen. One is, yeah, you can't put an accessory building between the front property line and the required setback right now. So the second paragraph would allow you to do that by special permit.
And John says you can't do that.
If you move forward this adoption to change the bylaw, you can. Currently, you cannot, but if you adopt this change, you could.
You agree with that, John?
You want to change the setback zoning to have exceptions to it?
That's what's being proposed.
Yes, that's being proposed.
So if you want to put an accessory building, which is 20 feet by 40 feet in the front of the house, then that's okay?
No, that would be something that would go to the ZBA. They'll hold a public hearing and make findings and make a determination.
Not if it was behind the 50-foot setback and between that and your house.
No, I know that.
You can do that.
Huh?
You can just do that
Correct.
By right.
by right.
Yes, you could do that.
I know.
But
And that leads to all these potential things. I mean, you let your neighbor do it if you want.
But I think we've over confused this issue, right? I think I'll speak for the rest of the board here, but I don't think any of the board has issue with the existing language that we have today, right? So somebody out there is saying, I do have an issue with what's written there today. What is that issue? What is the issue that someone is taking with the way the language is written today?
The ZBA raised the issue, did they not?
No, let me hold off. And then there's two parts. So what's the issue with the present language in F5A is it doesn't have right in here in the required front yard.
Right.
In the section, which I didn't have before you tonight, but when it comes to swim pools, F5C, it says front yard setback. So it has what that means. It defines it as it relates to the zoning bylaw. So the building department has been subject to interpretation of what's the front yard. So they have held that it's the 50-foot setback to the front face plane of a house. So that's what they've interpreted and enforced. So I was showing you some examples of that. And so the intent, the proposal in the first paragraph was to say, yes, you can, that's where it is. That's where you can put.
Wait, let's slow down a sec, Rich, sorry. So the issue is F5A doesn't define what the front yard is, but F5C does. So the way to solve the first problem is to use the same definition in F5C in F5A. Then we're consistent.
Correct.
Right, so that solves the problem of consistency. Right? Then there's a recommendation to change the definition of what can happen in that front yard, which is a different conversation, right? The first problem is consistency in the language. The second problem is let's change the language.
Right.
So I think we can agree to solve the first problem. We use the definition in C and A and we're good. then we can have a conversation about the second problem, which is do we want to change that definition?
That's exactly right. So that the original language should be defined that from the street, from the property line to the plane of the house, you can't put anything in. That's really by making the language existing not ambiguous. We'll get that covered. Now, the second question, like you said, is do you want to let something in there for these long setback houses? And I have no problem with that as long as it's controlled by a permit.
And I agree with John. I don't see why we should be arguing that someone could do that as of right, because there's so many conditions that we can't foresee that
Right.
would need to be reviewed by the zoning board.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand is why we would propose this as of right condition. What benefit does this as of right condition do? It's a,
Nothing.
yeah, I mean, it's making someone with a big front yard, giving them the ability to put something in their front yard. I don't know that that's something we want to unilaterally allow
Not without a special permit.
without review.
Yeah.
Correct.
So if you go to option B, essentially you're taking away what they have today. Is that,
Well, not, what do you mean?
well,
Yeah.
because
They don't really have it today by intent. They might have it by letter of the law, but they don't have it by intent.
You know, Rich, Aaron's idea by correcting the definition in the original zoning to say, clarify that it's between the lot line and the front plane of the house, that's the front yard. And then come up with language to let someone do that for certain conditions by a special permit.
Right. So for instance, we could handle the first problem now and we
Right.
could deal with the second problem next year.
Right.
so well, I
The
mean,
first problem, Aaron, just needed something in the definition section of the bylaws that defined what they were talking about, the front yard. And that definition would be from the front lot line to the plane of the house. That's all we need, the definition. But that was written in there with no definition, so no way to determine what they meant.
so we can clean up, yeah, we can clean the language up. But if I mirror what's in F5C, that, so right now F5C is somebody wants to put a pool in from the 50-foot setback to the front of their plane of the house, they can do it.
By special permit.
Nope.
If you scroll down a little bit, you should be able to see F5C, shouldn't you?
No, it's not on this one. I can pull it up to show you.
Okay, all right, okay, all right, fine.
I
That's
think-
not the language that you emailed us, Rich. The language you emailed us says it needs to be a special permit.
Not for the pool.
It says in no event in the front yard. Oh, it says in the front yard setback.
Right. So,
A special permit must be requested by the zoning board of appeals to locate a swimming pool between the required front yard setback and the principal building.
Yeah. Right, that's what he proposes.
That's being proposed or that's what's written?
That's what's being proposed, because it's in bold.
I took away F5C, changing it. So before you tonight was only F5A.
I think the language that you had in F5C should be in both F5A and F5C.
Let me just scroll up.
So
So that's the existing language in F5C on the screen.
and did I hear you correctly a moment ago to say you're proposing no change to that language?
Correct. No change to F5C.
Leave it the way it is,
Correct.
okay?
What I was proposing to do was, it's not exactly worded the same. I can change it, say front yard capital and setback,
Yeah,
and then add in open space, because open space was not even referenced at all in this section, F5A.
yeah, it should be though, right, yeah. Yeah,
And I can say front yard setback from F5A.
I think you could just take the language that you wrote for F5C, Rich, and use it, right, which
Yeah,
is the paragraph I just read. A special permit must be requested by the zoning board of appeals to locate a swimming pool or accessory building between the required front yard setback and the principal building.
So let me ask you the second part of it then, about from the front property line to the front plane of the house. Are you,
Define the,
That's the definition of front yard, right?
right, so what is the thoughts on allowing that special permit option?
Well, that runs afoul of what John has been telling us a moment ago, that between the property line and the setback line, you can't put anything. No
Right.
special
And-
permit will allow you to do anything there.
No, I understand. What I'm saying to you is you could propose a change to the bylaw to have that as an option for property owners.
Not according to what John says. You can't do that. You
course you
cannot
can.
change the
You could,
language.
you could, because it's established by the zoning board, so it can be changed by the zoning board. The
Well-
setbacks are established by the zoning board, so they could be changed by the zoning board.
It seems logical to me. I agree with you, but John's making a very
When you-
strong case that you can't do that.
when you start to allow certain things in any of the setbacks, it gets really murky.
I'm
That's
not
why
saying we
normally-
should, I'm just saying you could.
Right. That's why nothing is normally allowed in the setbacks.
Yeah, but shouldn't we give the ZBA the option to look at each case individually and make a decision that says,
Yes, yes, but not for the front setback, which is our zoning right now.
We don't have to give them that option because they have it. It's a given right of their
Um,
board and their zoning rules.
No, right now, if I want to go put if I want, and there are some right now that have enforcement letters, issued violation letters to them. They have an accessory building in their front yard that's less than 50 feet back from the street. So their only remedy is a variance. And those lots in those particular situations, they don't have the space to at least argue to put an accessory. And you're talking about a carport, for example, those little, some people have.
yeah. So they've applied for a variance. Now, somebody new with the same type of lot walks up to the ZBA and says, hey, I want to put a carport in the setback area. What's the ZBA going to do?
You can't do it.
Can't do it. They have to get a
You can't
variance.
do it. You can't change your use.
You'd have to get a variance to do it right now.
And the variance would be granted by the ZBA?
Right. And so
Variance,
Maybe.
yeah,
the ZBA is looking, at least, discussions with Chris, and it makes sense for somebody who has a small lot, they don't have the room to give them an option to do something and not a variance. I mean, the variance is, it's a much higher standard for somebody to have to prove. Where the special permit, you have a hearing, you can make findings, and you can make a decision on it for somebody.
when you're gonna put an accessory building in the front yard setback, you want to change zoning, which God forbid you do. That accessory building could be 20 feet by 40 feet. Now, what if somebody says, hey, my lot, I have no backyard, it's all wet. I want to move my house forward. So rather than having a 50-foot setback, I want to move my house what's only 30 feet back, so I have a little backyard. You're allowing any size accessory building in that front. Why can't I move my house? My house could be the same size as an accessory building.
Someone could make that case to the zoning board.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if they made it well enough, it could be approved.
I think
It's a
you're,
possibility.
Well, no, the zoning board can't change the front setback. That would have to be changing a bylaw.
right. So there's two things here. One is, do you want to change it? That's a separate question. Can you? You can change it. If you don't want to change it, that's a different argument, right?
Well, my idea is that we should allow the ZBA to grant either a special permit or a variance or whatever they need to do in order to accommodate somebody who has a small lot and needs to put something closer to the street than the setback would allow.
They want to give that option via special permit, not a variance.
Okay, then I'm okay with that.
And make the current bylaw not ambiguous by putting a definition in there.
I'm not sure we are okay with that. I think we want to say in a setback, It's a variance process, just like it is today for everywhere else. With, if you violate a setback, you apply for a variance. I don't think that's a common practice law that we don't want to change, I'm
Right.
guessing.
Right.
The second part of this is the special permit approval, which is between the setback and the front and the house, which is in the front yard, which we're saying makes sense through special permit.
Well, if that's the appropriate approach, then I'm okay with that too.
That's what I thought we had decided on last time.
Which is the way it's written in the text you sent, Rich,
Yeah. And so you're saying,
which seems to have,
so, no, I understand. I can go back to a prior version. What I'm hearing is that you're saying, okay, from the front setback to the front plane of the house, which they have allowed accessory structures in that area, will now be a special permit, not by right anymore.
Yeah,
And then in the 50, and then from the front property line to the 50-foot setback, no, it's still a no regardless, right?
that's not a no, it's a variance process.
Yeah, we don't even have to address that. That's just a variance of someone to do it.
Okay. All right, so then I will submit back to you a revised version. I might have a, I might have a separate conversation, with the ZBA about this as well, because they're the ones that get these requests a little bit.
Yep.
They
Yep.
don't come to the planning board and see what their thoughts are. So it's possible, just so you know, I mean, they may want to submit their own zoning amendment to town meeting and then on this matter. So I'll let you know, obviously, but you'd have to hold a hearing on that regardless, but so they can propose their own zoning amendment as well.
What we talked about, what Aaron just reaffirmed, is when I had talked to Chris Weider and you and Bob on the conference Zoom, that's exactly what Chris wanted. Define the language in the current law, make it not ambiguous, and allow a special permit in that middle area.
He also, and that's why I'll go back to him.
That's what he wanted.
He wanted to give the option for people in the front too, as well.
In the front, well, that's a variance. That's got nothing to do with this matter here.
Yeah, but he didn't want to do he didn't want the vehicle to be a variance. He wanted to be a special permit.
Well, let's cut the middle people out and let's get the zoning board in here and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll at least submit something for a placeholder to get on the warrant, and then we can.
okay, well, that one was easy. Let's talk about the floodplain.
Let's talk about the F11 again.
No, let's not. Talk about,
I guess the better news on the floodplain is we got a little bit more time, so we can continue to work on it, but it doesn't appear now that we need to do it for the May town meeting. We can do it in the fall. So.
all right, okay, yep.
Well, we'll be back. You thought that one was, yeah. That one won't be as bad, hopefully not, but.
All right. I'd like to take a moment to discuss the suite of policies that were published by the select board. I think all of you have received copies of them, had a chance to read them, I hope. And I think in a conversation I had with John, he made it clear that his point of view, and if I say this incorrectly, John, please correct me, but we do not need to adopt any of these policies because we're an independent board from the select board, and we're not required to sign and endorse any of these policies. However, I have read the code of conduct policy that they have published, and a number of these other policies, media relations, street, park, and town facility naming policy, submission of warrant articles to select board by departments and committees policy, and town hall facilities policy. And I generally support all of them. And I'd like to consider possibly even creating 2 more for us uniquely as a planning board. One is, I take it back, one, not 2. The town planner presently is required to submit a copy of the quarterly financial report to the Director of Finance, which gets forwarded to the town administrator and ultimately to the select board. I'd like to have a policy that requires the town planner to send a copy of that report to the planning board members as well, which is easy to do since he's already created the report, and we ought to get a look at it, in my view. And I'd like to send I'd like to consider the board sending a letter to the selectmen saying, we've read your policies, we endorse and support the code of conduct, the media relations, the street, park, and town facility naming, and submission of warrant articles, town hall facilities policies. But that's my thought, and I'd like to have some discussion quickly among the board members.
Well, like I said, we can subscribe to all the procedures in town hall, et cetera, like any other resident. But learning this firsthand, the only one that really has the right to have any code of requirements for any elected official is the voters or the Secretary of State. We can have a member that's violating ethics and should be recusing himself, or there's no way you can remove anybody from our meetings. You can't hold them out. You can do nothing. It's already been gone through. So saying that they can make a totally independent elected board subscribe to another board's policies, you can't. And I talked to Scott Bragdon, who wrote them up, and he agreed. He said, you can do it as a courtesy. You can just say that you're online with that. But again, if we have, and we've had people in the recreation and on the planning board years ago that just didn't go by anything, any norms, should have been recusing themselves, really, and other violations that we have no right to say you can't come to our meeting, you can't sit at the table, nothing. And that's just the way it is. The people have to vote them out, or you got to get into a Secretary of State ethics review and have them disciplined that way. But again, all of the things that were paid on the code of conduct for using town facilities, we are obviously responsible, like every resident in the town of Norfolk.
Aaron or Gary?
I agree. I read the policies. I think we would have to wordsmith it a little bit, but I also don't think it has any teeth to enforce anyone that doesn't conform to them.
Aaron?
I have nothing to add.
Well, as John mentioned,
There's a gentleman there that wants to speak.
so I see someone named Kevin. Yes, please speak, Kevin.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Very quickly to clarify, the select board identified an opportunity to be able to lay out some general conduct rules for the board and how we operate. We opted to send that out to all of the other elected boards in town as an option, an idea. If there was something that you wanted to adopt as part of that, because I don't believe that many boards in town have something like this in place, then you could absolutely do that. There was no requirement or request that everybody sign on to this same policy. It was more just to identify what we had done. And if anybody saw any value in it, then you could use as a template for your own board or your own application. So just to clarify, there was no intent or expectation that other boards in town would automatically subscribe to the same policy. Thank you.
Yeah, and I interpreted it that way, frankly. I think John hit on it. What I would propose is that we just write a note and say we're in sympathy and as a courtesy, we support these policies.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, everybody?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, moving on. let's see, where are we now? I think we're at the point where we need to talk about B1 zoning. Is that right, Rich?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. We have in our possession, I think, a series of proposed zoning articles, which we reviewed, I believe, last time. Rich, why don't you take us through where you want to go with this?
Sure. Well, Josh is with us somewhere, I think. I saw him. So what we have presented to you is the changes that you did discuss last time, but actually put into article form to move forward to town meeting for consideration to vote on.
Let me just pause one moment. Just for the record, one of our members has recused himself and left the meeting. That's Mr. Weddleton, because he's in a butter to the B1 district and cannot therefore comment on these proposed changes. All right, thank you. Please continue, Rich.
Sure. So we do have, so Josh has put together a presentation, a PDF presentation that we can walk through, which also includes a revised build out analysis based on the proposed changes being recommended to move to town meeting. So we can go through that as well. It probably makes sense to go through the presentation first, and then we can then dive back into the specifics of the language.
Yeah.
But everything that you had asked the last time to be put into it, I believe we've captured everything. And we did add in a provision for an additional amount of affordable housing. In discussions I had with Josh, it seemed to be a logical place to actually would be to put it in the affordable housing section of the bylaw, not embed it into the B1 section. So that is addressed, but it's not within the body of the B1 section of the zoning bylaws.
Yeah.
As well as there's three other ones actually. So one related to the design guidelines, which would make a proposed change to F11. And then a second change to the design review portion of the zoning bylaw. And the last one I sent to you the other day, thinking through a little bit more, was to amend the section of the bylaw which references the zoning map, because there would be a zoning map change.
Yep.
In the inner and outer. So that's part of this package. So Josh, do you want to, I'll just turn it over to you share wise and go through the PowerPoint presentation. Does that make sense?
Before we do that, just two other thoughts have occurred to me. Rich, we also ought to talk this evening about the next steps here, the boards that we need to update as to what we're proposing, and also how we're going to reach out to the citizens prior to the town meeting.
Yes, we can definitely talk about that. Before we, and just on that point, what I'm hearing thus far is it appears as if, nothing's official, but Kevin would know as well, that we probably would be outside for town meeting. That's a pretty strong chance. So
that means there's no screen and no projector, right?
Right. So that I would,
Sheesh.
So that would be, handouts for town, people at town meeting on that particular day, but then there's work to be done prior to that, but at least for that particular day, it would be done in a handout fashion. So.
Well, that really handicaps this particular initiative. Okay, this is a little bit complicated, and screen and projector really would help, I think, a lot. But anyway, that's not under our control, I guess.
No. I mean, I suppose there's still a potential chance it would be inside, but I would probably not bet on that option. So I'm just going, I'm really more, I think proceeding on the idea that we'll be outside.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
Rich. Jay Tallerman told us it was going to be outside. So your choice is if you want to be able to present, you need to wait till the fall town meeting, which would likely be indoors regardless of COVID like it was this year. So even if the restrictions are in place, it would have to be indoors because it's in November.
Well, if it's in the same.
So if you want to be able,
Yeah, I guess if it's indoors and we're where we were in last November, I don't want to do it then.
No, no, I mean, you might be able to project something on the white wall of that room, but the acoustics was so terrible in there. They've got to be significantly improved if you're going to use that room again.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, let's go.
Well, I mean, people made zoning changes long before audiovisual systems were used to present them. So
They did?
I think we can figure it out. Right?
Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Okay, who's next? Josh?
Yeah, so I think makes sense to turn the presentation over to Josh. Do you want to screen share? I'll just screen share with you. Is that?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Rich. Good evening, everyone. Josh Fiala, MAPC. Happy to be with you again. So once I get the ability to share, yeah, and just on the topic you were all just discussing, we'd be happy to support Rich and you all with the handout to describe the changes recommended for town meeting, if that would be helpful. All right, so it looks like I could share now. All right, so hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yep.
Good. All right, so this is a brief presentation, but just to recap the zoning recommendations, and then we have a little bit of discussion, we think, around the affordable housing step increase, where exactly that step should occur. There's good reason for it to occur in two places, and we just wanted the board's opinion on that. Also wanted to give a brief update on the economic development bond bill, which does have some zoning changes, overall legislative changes, which impact zoning changes, such as the ones we're discussing. And then we did update the building analysis as the board requested at the last meeting. So these are the changes that should be hopefully getting more familiar now, that the 10 that we're zeroing in on and recommending proceeding with, those are the ones that Rich has the language in warrant format for this evening. So I won't dwell too much on that. The economic development bond bill, hopefully you have all heard about this a little bit, but we wanted to clarify, this is the language which is actually in the legislation that was recently signed by the governor. And it effectively has there's a few parts to it. I think the important parts for us in this conversation are twofold. I would highlight the what you see on the screen in section 3A, that every MBTA community shall have a zoning ordinance which provides at least one district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right, and that multifamily housing is required to occur at a density of at minimum 15 units per acre. So this is a change and required change. The specifics around which and the guidance coming from the Department of Housing and Community Development is being clarified sort of as we speak. This is all unfolding relatively rapidly at the state's level. So there are some things there that need to be clarified, like what does reasonable size mean for that zone? That's unclear, and some other aspects of that language. But the density is clear. And so what we wanted to point out is that, of course, the current density that's in the B1 district does not comply with that, and that the density which we have proposed and which we've been consistently sort of sticking with for a while now is compliant with that feature of the legislation. So this, just to kind of close the loop on what that all means, is that the state eventually, once these regulations sort of get lined up and in gear, will require compliance with these to become Mass Works grants eligible. So it has an impact on sort of the future bottom line. So this is something that we're advising all all towns and cities within the region to sort of how to become compliant with it as we get more knowledgeable about it. Then the other aspect of the legislative changes were that zoning changes which increase the likelihood of residential units, including the density, including mixed use zoning changes. There's a whole sort of suite of zoning changes under this, but those changes are now only required to achieve a simple majority, 50% at town meeting or at city council vote for a change of an ordinance. And that was a supermajority previously, so it was 66%. And now that bar has been lowered to 50% of the vote for specific kinds of changes. And these changes would qualify, the changes that we're talking about for the package for B1 here, would qualify for that simple majority. And here's the, I think up on the screen now is the language I just referenced, where the specific language that's in the legislation that's been signed at the State House. All right, so maybe I'll just pause there because it's a lot of language. I'm not sure if I have all the answers for that. We're still getting clarification ourselves, but if there are any questions about the economic development bond bill, I'll try to provide whatever guidance I've heard. All right, seeing none, I will move along. The affordable housing step increase that we've talked about, the existing inclusionary bylaw in the town of Norfolk, of course, is 10%, where 10 or more dwelling units are provided in a project. And there was discussion at the previous previous planning board meeting to increase that to 15%, but to do it at some sort of increment that made sense. We've looked a little bit more with the addition of the updating of the bill out analysis was actually very helpful in thinking about what would be a good number. So we propose that 15% would be triggered at 15 or more units or at 20 or more units. And both of those numbers we think are reasonable. At 15 or more units, you capture a few more properties within the B1 district. And so that would be the justification there, that you could actually potentially get 15% on a few more properties. The justification but those are projects which may be not much larger than that 15 units. So they may be sort of 18 units, they may be 19 units. And the con there is that sort of scale of project might have, just very razor thin margins and difficulty putting in an extra affordable unit, if that's what the 15% meant with their numbers. On the other hand, if we move that step to 20, so you have to go to 15% affordable included if you hit 20 units or more, that reduces the number of properties potentially that it would apply to, but those properties are much more than 20 units in the build out projections that we've created. So they would foreseeably have a better chance of being able to accommodate that extra 5% of affordable. So that's the pros and cons there. I was on the fence, and Rich, as we were talking about, it wasn't clear. So we just thought we'd put it out to the planning board if you, given those pros and cons, had a preference between the step occurring at 15 units or more or at 20 units or more.
Why don't you proceed and we'll comment at the end.
Okay. So here's just a snapshot of the updated build out analysis that shows some of those figures. So if you look at the property, for example, at 201 Main Street or at 9 Liberty Lane, those are the largest of the properties in the B1, of course. And those are achieving, in the neighborhood of 50 plus for both of them with multiple buildings on each of those properties, by the way. And so you get those two properties at 20 plus. And then if you go to the remainder of the properties in the B1 district and the build out on the screen, you can see the remainder of properties that hit, there's 4 more which get beyond 15 units per acre. And if you reduce that down to 20 or more, you don't have only 3 properties. Those numbers would change a little bit if you did see some lot assembly, which is one of the scenarios that we did test out over the summer. There's, we looked at potentially 8 different areas that could be assembled in different fashions, in which case the 20 units per acre would probably be hit maybe a little bit more. But that's, I think, that amount of assembly is not guaranteed in any way.
Mhm.
All right, so I'll just wrap up real quickly. The updated build out analysis I'll share with you. You saw just a little bit of a preview of it there, but I'll just get through some conclusions from it. So as I always do with these build out sort of analyses, there's many caveats that we're with kind of creating a mathematical maximized scenario here. There's a lot of market realities that could adapt, adjust these numbers, and these numbers may not ever be achieved in actuality, but the build out is reflecting what the maximum could occur under the zoning that is proposed. The other big caveat is that it does not consider wastewater constraints. So it effectively is assuming that all properties would have access to a package or sewer of some kind, packaged wastewater treatment. And the other caveat I mentioned is the market, in that absorption of housing units or commercial space is not accounted for in these figures. So this was based upon the new sub-district boundary, which we've all, I think, settled on now. And you see it outlined in black there. So I did not look at any of the properties that are outside of that. And these are the numbers. I'm happy to share this. Well, I think Rich actually shared the PDF of this presentation, so you can maybe zoom in a little bit and see the figures a little easier. But I'll skip to the next slide. This is just kind of to show that there's actually math behind these things. It's all worked out. But I think that the easier way to understand this is just some of these conclusions, that the total unit range is anywhere from probably like 200 to 350 units based upon these zoning changes. And previously, the previous package we had talked about over last fall and had talked, I think we did an updated build out last summer on that previous package. The range was upwards of 600 units. So through the changes, bringing the height down, keeping the parking at the levels that it is in terms of residential unit requirements, reduces the overall unit numbers, and I think puts it into a place, hopefully, which more members of the town are comfortable with, and doesn't present a higher level risk of sort of runaway residential development, which I think was a concern we heard. Affordable housing unit range is anywhere from 25 to 45 affordable units integrated with that overall number. That was previously calculated as an upper range of about 90. So that comes down, and that would, that does include actually some properties being at the 15%.
It does, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the total commercial space is still, potentially high for the amount of commercial space that might be absorbed in the town center. And that's ranging from 50 to 140,000 square feet on those ground floor levels. That's, I think, a much more realistic range than what we were seeing before, where we had upwards of 220,000. And that, I'm just thinking now, actually, that number might have been at a larger sub-district area, because I've shrunk this down in terms of sub-district, because I was contemplating myself why that number changed so much, because the ground floors haven't changed that dramatically much.
Mm.
And then you can see the variation in the limiting factor, which I think is an important thing to show, that the zoning characteristics are still relatively balanced. So it's not one of the zoning characteristics that's always limiting, depending on the variations in the size of the parcels, the configuration and layout of the parcels. You see the parking requirements are the most often limiting factor, which I would anticipate, because the parking ratios are still, I wouldn't consider them overly aggressive right now. The maximum story height does show up as the limiting factor occasionally. That's the 3-story height. And then on the largest parcels, the 15,000 square foot maximum building footprint and the 16 unit per acre density show up as the constraining factors, which give you that kind of the upper limit and reassurance that none of these projects will get too out of control in terms of their scale and fit with the town center. So I think that is my last slide. And just to show back to this more detailed version, the color coding here, the yellows and the greens, highlight the characteristic that was the limiting factor for each of those property lines. So that's where those counts came from. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or hand it over to Rich to go through the warrant article language.
Well, before you hand it over to Rich, can you go back to the last slide, the next one after this one?
Sure.
That 220,000 square feet, as you said, was potentially on a different footprint of the zone, right? Of the district.
Yeah, I realize that's probably why that number has come down so much. Is the previous total was for, I think, almost the entire B1 district.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so anyway, the point is, can you get a chance to tweak that a little bit?
I can do look at the old build out figure and do it for the same sub boundary.
Fair enough. Okay, now back to the beginning where the affordable housing increment of 15 or 20. Can we go back to that slide?
Real quick, Walter, why do we want to adjust the numbers in that way, Josh? I mean, that isn't the point of this that we heard the comment that the proposal was too dense and too aggressive, and we dialed back from those big numbers to something much more, well, seemingly much more acceptable. Why?
Well, yeah, but don't you want it to be apples to apples?
No.
You don't. You want it to be orange to apple. Okay, well.
I mean, the numbers that created the stir were what was being proposed, which was the entire district. And then there was a decision made to limit the district and change the ultimate volume of construction. I think that was a very calculated decision made, and I think we should take credit for it.
Okay.
I see it. Yeah, I can see it both ways. Maybe there's some way for us to express both of those figures to show the two comparisons, but Aaron's correct that the previous figures were more accurately representing what the previous set of recommendations were. So it was an expanded boundary.
No, okay, I accept that argument. I accept that. Okay. On this slide, I'd like to hear how the board feels about these two options. Gary, how do you feel? Should it be 15 or 20? Having listened to what Josh said about the limitations on the property and of either of these proposals or both of the proposals.
I was okay going up to 15% with for densities beyond 20. I think we reported 2 months ago that it was happening in Walpole, and they were even starting at a lower number, which was at 6 units. They were burdening the developer. So I'm fine with the 15%.
And you're okay at the 20 units or more.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Aaron.
I'll say this. Take the build out scenario in mind, right? We're talking about adding 200 to 350 units in our center of town. I've made the pitch before that if you're going to put high density housing anywhere, the right place to put it from a planning perspective is in the center of town, right next to the train station. In terms of, smart planning methods. It's the heartbeat of the town. It's near public transportation. It creates a bustling commercial district, which was, one of the goals of the V1 district. Through a course of much discussion, we've manipulated the numbers such that we're adding in the neighborhood of 200 to 350 houses, and yet have gained no traction on our 40B housing issues. We, at 15%, we'll be adding something like a grand total of 5 to above and beyond the 10% required, making no headway on what our numbers are. So if we're not gaining headway on our 40B issue in the one part of town where more dense housing is probably more appropriate, where are we going to gain headway?
Well, the option in front of us is to decide whether we would like to have that increment at 15% at 15 units or 20 units.
I would argue 20.
Okay.
And I would argue that it should be
20%?
even more dense.
Yeah. Okay. I'm at the 20 as well. Okay. So that kind of makes it unanimous for those of us who are here. Hello, Chad. Chad has just joined us. Chad, where did you tune in terms of what Josh was presenting?
I caught the tail end of Josh's presentation. I'm sorry I missed that. I caught the last few slides.
Okay, all right.
But I agree with what Aaron's saying, is that the downtown is the appropriate place to have that density.
Yep.
I would support that.
Okay, yep. All right, Rich, I guess it's back to you with the language of the proposed zoning change.
Okay.
If I may interject, I did have a question. So basically, we've scaled down the scope of area which was involved, but essentially with that decrease, we're going to have basically the same concentration of density, but in a smaller area. So basically, it's the same concentration of density, okay, with relative to the area involved, correct?
That's the way I interpret it, yeah.
And then doing that, we're not going to be making any headway toward that 10%. Okay, and I understand that the downtown area is the appropriate place logically with the transportation, but we also don't have enough infrastructure in the downtown area for the traffic flow. I mean, we don't even have a traffic light in downtown. With more apartments and more development, we're looking at more traffic and more people. How are we going to be able to modify the downtown area for it to handle that?
Well, I was just going to respond with each project that would come forward, depending on the scale, they would have to go through their own impact analyses in the town center on those intersections. And then at the point where mitigation is required, depending on the analyses that they undertake, there would be potentially improvements to those intersections to accommodate the scale. But the roadways that you have with the roundabouts are actually quite efficient traffic intersections and can move a fair amount of traffic quite well. So I would not be too concerned about the scale of redevelopment that we're talking about and that number of residential units, those ranges, with the potential traffic impact, not for a few projects at least. And each of those would then be measuring their impact and providing solutions as they're needed.
Okay, so I'm on the zoning board, so I've sat down during these meetings where we've tried to mitigate a number of these items, the traffic items, but they were with 40B projects. Would we have more say in this situation than we would be with 40B as far as mitigating traffic and traffic light design?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. We would have opportunity to make conditions of approval, traffic improvements if they were required.
Okay, and
as we have done in other developments, by the way, throughout town.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like the 40Bs. Okay, and then so what would happen to the area that is outside of this area that was once earmarked for this project? Would it still be in the B1 zoning district, and would we be developing that later similarly to this, or?
Yeah, the B1 district has two sub-districts, the core and the outside the core. And so what we're effectively doing is suggesting shrinking the core, which would have these new zoning characteristics that we've been discussing. And the other areas which are not in that newly defined core would revert to outside the core as the sub-district. and the characteristics of outside the core are not recommended to change.
Okay, so it would stay the same. And just, if you could just tell me, does the core that we're discussing now include that Stop and Shop parcel?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that we can get that off, and that was the, and it includes one of the, some of the biggest parcels. I did see Mr. Chipman's parcel in there. So it would be the biggest parcels that would be involved in this.
Yes, yeah, those are the big parcels, right?
That's, okay, so we may not meet that number, but we'll at least be able to get a couple of those major parcels off the table. Okay,
Hopefully. I mean, that's the purpose here, is to make the zoning amenable, so developers will say, gee, this is a good deal. Let's see if we can develop something.
exactly. So even though we may not meet close to the 10%, we'll be able to have control over the larger parcels, which could otherwise, you know, end up with a different fate than these parcels. Okay.
They
Thank you
still
very
could.
much. Thank you very much.
I mean, the larger parcels still could be developed as 40B projects.
Oh, they still could be. So, well, no, you're saying the larger parcels are involved in this. There are larger parcels than this?
Yeah,
No,
we're hoping, I guess the overall goal will be, if you look on the screen, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah,
Okay, so the kind of, I don't know, deeper red or burgundy color here would be the new inner core. So there's some, before, if you remember, this was all B1 inner core, but effectively it's already built out with condominiums, and there's some town properties, so that was removed. There's 2 properties that we went through the discussion were removed on Boardman Street, that went further up on Boardman Street. We pulled back 1 property past on the other side of the tracks on Rockwood Road. We did extend a little bit further, though, the B1 inner core here, just down to the opposite side of the fire station. Everything on this map that you see could be a 40B. So 40B, obviously, you remember, obviously, on the ZBA, it can go anywhere. So the thought behind this zoning change is that there would be some zoning changes that would offer up another opportunity for development, redevelopment in Norfolk Center, and not necessarily via a 40B project, which includes, there is residential in the mixed use piece of it, but also commercial as well. So that's kind of the premise behind it. And the other thing, as far as the build out, and I think it needs to be clear to people a little bit, at least as we go forward, those build outs based on sewer availability, and not all this is sewered. We're talking about a sewer expansion potentially here, but the properties that are on Liberty Lane and partly up on Meeting House, their cap of sewer flow is 30,000 gallons a day, which would be well above that build out. Well below those build out numbers. So now, if additional sewer capacity became available, it would have to be through the town of Norfolk to do that, unless somebody wanted to build and put their own wastewater treatment plant on their particular property, which is a tall task from an economic standpoint to do. It's not really scalable under our density to do that economically. It'd have to be another way to do that. But just as we speak today. Now, we'll go through the zoning, but we did talk about before that down the road, the town might revisit 40R. And if that were to happen, there might be higher densities too, as well as it relates to affordable housing. So that could be part of a future answer as it relates to 40B.
Are you assuming that no one's going to build out with apartments, that everything's going to be condos? Doesn't the apartment side of the equation help us more than 0 gain or 5-unit gain?
Not through the zoning. It only helps through 40B.
40B, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I see what you're saying. If it's not a 40B project, the apartments are not counting, so it still needs to be a 40B project
Or 40R.
No,
or 40R.
so apartments do count under our zoning, but they count just on the unit, but they're the same as ownership. So it's 1 for 1. So if we have,
Okay.
15 apartments, then we'd have 15% of it would be affordable.
Hmm.
So it would remain the same in that way.
The commercial component will still be on the first floor
Unle-
of these buildings?
Yes, the commercial will be on the first floor of the building. Did you want, I do see hands up. Do you want to go through this or you want to field questions?
Peter's had his hand up for a while.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Through the chair. I wonder if you could explain in a little more detail what you're proposing for the affordable housing on the step increase. And I guess my first question would be, is the step increase only going to apply to the B1 core? And then I was hoping for something a little more aggressive in the step increase, something in the neighborhood of 6 to 12 units at 10%, 13 to 20 at 15%, plus 20 at 20%. Something a little more aggressive.
Okay, Peter.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
what has been proposed thus far is 15% when you get 20 units or more. And it was applied to the core only, as I understand it.
Right.
All of these changes are applied to the
To the
B1
core only,
core
yeah.
only.
Would you, just for clarification, Peter, would you repeat that increment that you were proposing?
Yeah, this is Peter Diamond. So I was thinking from 6 to 12 units at 10%, because right now it starts at 10 units.
Yeah.
We drop that to 6 units.
Yeah.
And then from 13 to 20 units at 15%, plus 20 units, 20%.
Gary, going back to the Walpole issue from a couple of months ago, where you picked up what they were changing, what were they doing? Do you remember?
They had the same unit numbers, and I can't find in my notes the 3 increments that responded to it. It was 6 to 12, 13 to 20, and 20. I think it was 13 to 19, and then 20 and above. I think it makes more sense what Peter said. And they did have the lower increment, the 10% starting at 6 units. I just don't have in my notes properly. I think he might be correct that it was 20 20% when it went over 20 units.
Mhm.
And the final thing is, Josh said something about putting this affordable housing zoning bylaw in the affordable housing. So would it be town-wide or just the B1? Why not just make this town-wide?
Well, it was Rich that said that, but he was talking, I believe, just about the B1 core, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Rich?
Yeah, it's just the B1 core.
And leave the town-wide at 10%?
What's that? Yeah.
The inclusion
Yeah, the
of zoning
focus-
bylaw at 10% for the
Yeah,
rest of the town.
Yeah, the focus of this, Peter, is really to try and get some commercial and residential development in the B1 core. The affordable housing aspect of it is not the main focus of what we're trying to do. That's not to say it's not important and shouldn't be discussed, but it's really outside the scope of what we're trying to do here, is to address affordable housing in the rest of the town, and what the increments should be. That's not to take anything away from what you're proposing here within the B1 core, which is 6 to 12, 10%, 13, let's say to 19, 15%, and 20 or more, 20%, which we can discuss and chew on here and decide whether we want to adopt that or not.
Thank you.
let's see, where are we here? Gary, what do you think about Peter's proposal?
I think it adds to closing our gap, and I would be voting for it.
Aaron? Yeah, I saw that. That for those of you who couldn't see Aaron, it was 2 thumbs up. Chad?
Fine with that. I would support that.
Josh, what do you think?
I think it would be a great approach. Of course, our agency is never opposed to affordable housing. I think
Yeah, I understand.
we
Right.
think it's a great need in the region. But
Well,
well, I would just add that I think that range and those numbers reflecting on the build out do kind of align with where you'd want them to in terms of the scale of the projects and the variation. So I think that for the smaller projects, that number is good to keep it at the 10% for the 6 to 12, and then moving up from there. I think it's a good approach.
What about another member of our B1 committee, Mr. Calcutt?
Wholeheartedly agree with the approach.
Well, it sounds like we have, oh, Rich, we didn't get your comment. Rich?
I think it works. Well, back up. I think we'll have to see. I understand the goal and to get to more affordable housing. I just, my only reservation would be, which is whether it really generates some development mixed use in the center of town or not.
Or whether it inhibits it, in other words.
Yeah, it inhibits it.
Really use another half a story.
Now don't go there, Aaron.
No, I mean, that's, these are challenging projects, and I don't know, we'll have to see. I mean, conceptually, it makes sense, I think, but I also would say that, the thing we also need to be, and we are going to be embarking on doing another housing production plan coming up in June. And I think we really need to dive a little bit deeper dive as it relates to affordable housing, because, there has been one subdivision in town in the last 3 years, which, Rob Kane's subdivision over on Medway Street. The rest of it,
Norway Farms, yeah.
Yeah, Norway Farms.
Right.
We need to get our affordable housing up, but we also have to be mindful. We do not, at the same time, we don't want to be pushing people to 40B because we're restricting it so much.
Yeah.
I don't think you don't want to cut your nose to spite your face. We need to get there. We need to get there strategically, but that's just that's a bigger picture down the road as we get this on affordable housing. Walpole's above, I think their number is a little bit much higher than ours when as it relates to 40B. So, clamping down as you get closer to 10% is a lot more strategic and more manageable, but we need to talk about that at a later date. So I'm fine with that. We'll see how it goes, and we'll monitor and see. Hopefully it works. I mean, and we don't have issues.
Mr. Diamond's suggestion, what happens with the commercial component? Does that go away or remains?
No, it's still there. It's still there.
Remains.
Yep.
I think what we're struggling with is the trade-off between the improvement in affordable housing as a result of the zoning change, and on the other hand, the attractability of a developer looking at the numbers that we're proposing and whether they can make an economic profit out of this whole deal. That's really the trade-off we're balancing here. Kevin.
Thanks, Walter. First and foremost, Walpole is currently at 7.1% subsidized housing inventory, so they are a little bit ahead of us in terms of that aspect. Walter hit the nail on the head. We're trying to figure out what the trade-off is here for what we're accommodating for to be able to make this economically feasible for developers and what the community has an appetite for. I feel that by moving a little bit more towards developing the affordable housing aspect, we're giving something back to the town to help us with something that we're kind of lacking in right now. We've given the developer some density improvements, which I think is a good offset for that. And in addition, with 40B, if they were to go that route, yes, the affordability would be the same percentage, but they are capped at a 25% profit margin of those projects, which wouldn't be the case with these. So I don't necessarily feel like we're jumping too far over that line by going this route with affordability. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Well, we need to make a decision, and it sounds like we've got support among the board.
There's Susan Klein has her hand up.
Okay, where is she? Susan, speak. Susan?
Hi, how are you? Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Not saying that it wouldn't get support starting at a lower number of 6, but I think everybody has to understand that, which I know the planning board does understand this. I'm more speaking to the residents that are on the call. Unless we get to a residential density, we're never going to hit our affordable number by having a developer who's putting in 20 houses have to build 2 affordable houses. It's never going to get there. Our affordable housing number is in the hundreds. The only way to get there is with apartment complexes that are 40B or 40R with residential density. So I think that has to be part of the discussion whenever you're discussing changing the number or changing the percentage. It has to be part of the discussion, in my opinion. That's all.
Yeah, looks like Peter Diamond's got his hand up again. Peter?
Yeah, I'm here. Josh was mentioning the new zoning, the changes in the 40A, and I would imagine that's going to end in our downtown B1 district. And I don't believe the new law includes mixed development. So by adopting this residential affordable housing percentages, I would imagine it would apply to that development too.
I would think so. I don't think the new law says anything about commercial. It's all focused on housing. I don't think it prevents us from presenting a district that allows mixed use, as long as it includes housing density at the required part of the law, which is 15 or 15 units per acre, and we're at 16, I think. Our proposal is at 16, so.
That is a clarification which we're seeking is whether a district such as Norfolk's would comply with the requirements in that the multifamily housing which you're allowing is required to have a commercial component, and if that type of mixed use development would be compliant. So that's not clarified yet, but we're hoping to get that from DHCD.
Boy, I sure hope they allow it, because otherwise we're back to square one here.
Yeah, and I think that, that is something. So there's really 2 pieces that Josh and I talked about. One is that piece, whether or not the mixed use counts, to clarify that, but also the reasonable size provision within the statute. What does that actually mean? So there is a potential possibility we may have to revisit this, because this proposed set of zoning recommendations are, it's just the B1 inner core. It's not the whole entire B1. So as guidance comes forward from the state, it's something that we have to pay attention to.
I think that's right, but that doesn't mean we should stop. We ought to go ahead and do what.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting stop it. I'm just saying we need to keep in tune with it.
Right. Kevin wishes to speak again.
Very quickly, within the language, and I'm no legislative analyst by any means, but within the language, they do make a point to identify that there can be no age restriction on this district that you look to implement to be in compliance. So with that theory, they did have the opportunity to make exemptions where they thought they were required. So Where we are right now, I feel like what we're putting forward does put us into compliance with the way that it's written today. And Josh, I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that age restriction question came up from someone earlier this week, and I'm glad you clarified that. Thank you. All right, I think we're at the point where Rich wants to, may not want to, but is required to read us the language that we're proposing on the various articles here.
So I'm going to, well, I'll probably do a little combination of reading and showing, I guess. So as I sent off to you all earlier, this is one of the things I added the other day, because thinking it through, we would be within the B1 changes we're proposing, we make reference to the zoning map. So this simply would change the zoning map date, and also we would change the zoning map district boundaries, which is shown on the screen.
Yeah.
Now this represents the proposal. The prior one I showed you, my mistake was the existing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a companion to that. Why is it? Hold on. So the next one is C. So F5CA, which is the change to the site plan approval bylaw, where we add a new provision as it relates to the design guidelines to reference for town center for the B1. Now, Josh has already gone ahead and updated the design guidelines. I can send that out to everybody afterwards just to take a look, but
okay,
this would be the companion to that.
yeah.
Similarly, as it relates to design review standards, again, referencing the B1 guidelines within the bylaw section to be consistent. So this gets into where we kind of had a discussion about the place for the affordable housing. So based on what was discussed tonight, we would change this D, which is the applicability under the affordable housing bylaw, H3, because we're actually creating a different standard for the B1 right now. So this language will have to be revised to reflect that tiered approach that was discussed earlier. So we'll have to make adjustment to that, but
yep,
that's where it would reside. Again, this one's pretty straightforward. This would change the I3 to reference the new zoning district boundaries with the business core and outside the business core. We talked about before the elimination of the PMLD. And so this is strictly just deleting that language within the bylaw.
Well, before you depart from that, just in 25 words or less, and the rationale for doing that is what?
So I will say the rationale is that you can put multiple buildings on one lot and structure it so that someone they share all the utilities without having to create a zoning bylaw provision to do that. So if somebody wanted to have a septic system on site, share the septic system, the drainage system, the parking, etc., it could all be done within that development scheme, as opposed to a PMLD. In practical terms, it's better suited to have it, I think, from a function or actually even a permitting standpoint, the onus sticks on the property owner to share those utilities. Now, if they want to sell a building on the site, there's a ways to do that from a real estate transaction without having to give them a zoning bylaw provision to do that. And the PMLDs that we've had, There's actually been more issues with them than the benefits on the.
Okay, that's good. It's just that we need to make sure that we have an explanation in case someone asks a question while you're doing that.
Yeah. Phase development, we just tweaked the language. Well, we just deleted PMLD. We still want to know about phase development, but it'd be applicable to a, building or a site with multiple buildings on it. So building height, I know, so this proposal would bring it to 46 feet to the peak of the roof. And that's the change that we would do. What we did do, so there is a distinct difference though here. So you just could propose 46 feet in height in the inner core, business core, and then the outer core, we just mimic what was already in the bylaw today. For outside.
Yep. Yep.
So that's the proposed change there. This we get to is the density. So we're just prescribing the density on a 16 units per acre within the B1 core. And then the outside core remains with it, which is the 16 units per acre or any single lot. Let's see. Well, look at that. So town water, we just deleted the provisions about the PMLD. Nothing should be too. Again, so we deleted the smaller lot sizes because we'd be proposing eliminating PMLD. The front yard setback would be 6 feet, which would mirror up with the build 2 line that does remain.
Yep.
The rest would just.
Rich, can I jump in there?
Yeah, sure.
There are a number of sites in the B1 district, either B1 district, that are less than 30,000 square feet.
The B1?
There are. I went and looked.
Okay.
So what should that number be then?
There are lots down in the 7,000, 8,000 range. I'm not, this one jumped out at me. I don't remember having conversations about a minimum lot size, so I wasn't sure where this one came from. We talked about minimum building size.
Yeah, right.
Well, probably in all the discussion, we definitely had a minimum lot size.
The 4,000 only applied to the PMLD though.
Right.
So what do we do with the lots that are less than 30,000 square feet that exist today? Or grandfathered in? Or
they're grandfathered, yes. So yeah, they would be grandfathered lots, so they would have to, if they wanted to do development, they'd have to go through a special permit process through the Board of Appeals to expand. Then they could only expand up to 50%.
So what benefit does specifying the minimum lot size offer us? And why is 30,000 better than 4,000?
Well, we actually,
so it applies to 6. That would apply to 6 lots within the B1 core subdistrict. And I think Aaron, you raise a good point. It's reasonable to potentially change it, but 30,000 square feet is what it is today. 4,000 is a number which does not apply because they would have to they could only get to that number through PMLD, which they would not be using.
Okay, but is 30,000 the right number, I guess? I accept the 4,000 square foot removal based on PMLD, but is 30,000 the right number?
Or if it is, how do we address the lots that are less than 30,000?
But
we don't have to answer those questions now, I guess, Rich.
No, but yeah, let's flag that and come back to it, but we need to fix that, or at least understand it better. Okay, moving on.
The quick answer to it is they either have to try to merge, sell off to combine to get to the minimum, or they would have to try to go for, like I just mentioned, a special permit to expand up to a maximum 50%. Or you adjust the minimum required lot down to whatever the smallest one is, or close to. So, but we built all the density that we've done through this point to now. We based it on PMLD was being removed. So,
I'm not recommending we keep PMLD. I'm just saying, it seems to me like there's a consistency problem with specifying a minimum lot size of 30,000 square feet. And we've now encumbered at least 6 sites by making them not developable by right. That seems like a problem, considering our goal here is to promote development, not hinder development.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I would frame it as they've always been encumbered. We've not made it worse. This is an existing problem that we're trying to fix now, but we've not made it worse.
Good qualification.
yeah, no, that's a pretty important. Yeah,
It's a very important qualification. Yes.
You won the day of there. All right. Josh.
Just as an example, a 20,000 minimum square foot lot size would take it down to only 2 properties not complying.
So it doesn't.
It takes it from 6 to 2.
Yeah.
So again, what difference does the minimum lot size matter? If someone's going to break up the big lot into smaller lots. Well, anyway, we need to talk about this one a little more, I think.
Yeah, agreed. All right, move on, Rich.
All right. So you want to, yeah, well, all right, we can go back. Again, just remove the reference to the PMLD in the outer core as well. All deletions, PMLD. Parking is where we made the adjustment for taking away, not eliminating the reservation piece of parking. So you could forego 30% of the required parking through the planning board permitting process.
But kept the language which says the applicant must demonstrate to the board.
Correct.
The reasonableness of this proposal.
Correct. Yes. I did hear somebody thought we requiring a lot more bikes so we did increase the amount of bike parking, but considering it's within the B core, I think that makes sense to do that. Pretty straightforward. Scrolling through. So we did, it is deleting this one, but it's being added to a new use category as we get further down. So it's not as if we're getting rid of that use, we're combining it with another one as we go further.
Which are you pointing at now? The
So
dance.
the
Yes.
dance, exercise, aerobics.
Yeah, it comes in at the end, right?
Yeah, it comes down at the end.
Yeah.
But it is being proposed to eliminate limited motor vehicle sales. And then shift that to a prohibited use. And then it would, and I think in some respects, I think, so this parking lot as a principal use would no longer be allowed within the B1 because we'd be eliminating the PMLD as well. So that's a companion to it.
Yeah.
So then we didn't define it, but we created a shared work facility as a new use. And then down the bottom, we broadened it a little bit, wellness, dance, exercise, aerobics. So that's added to it as a new use to the B1. So this, I know Walter at least raised the point, the gasoline diesel fueling stations right now is allowed by special permit. it's being proposed to be removed and added to the prohibited use. So what does that do to the existing station? That becomes just a legal non-conforming use. So it remains that way. The downside to that gas station owner would be if it were abandoned for more than 2 years, it would lose its non-conforming status if we made this change. But otherwise, it can remain and operate it. If they wanted to expand it, they have to go through a special permit process, although the site's pretty much maxed out for the existing gas station. So that would end up essentially being the only one in town center with that proposed change.
What happens in the case that they want to sell the property? Does that go with it?
It does. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it remains.
What happens if they sell it and the new owner wants to tear it down and rebuild it? Can they do that?
They could build it. Yeah, they could tear it down and rebuild it. It's just they can't. They got to do it within the time frame though. So that's the.
Okay.
So that I suppose that. No, the risk. So under that scenario, I suppose if they had to replace the gas tanks and remove them, and it took them longer than that period, that could be a risk to them.
Well,
So-
they could come to the planning board, could they not, and ask for an extension?
From the abandonment.
Yeah,
What's the driving force to remove that, to strike it?
I think the overall thought it was not a aligned use for the town center necessarily. I mean, I think where the town center would be going long term as opposed to maybe historic perspective. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, I know.
It was to prevent having multiple gas
Yeah.
stations downtown.
Okay.
yeah,
One seems like enough. And
Yeah.
yeah.
we're
I
not
agree.
kicking them out. We're just
No.
saying.
Right.
Yeah, one is enough, and we don't want to kick them out. And all I was questioning was, how do we craft the language such that we don't write it such that then they have to get out? I want to make sure that they're grandfathered, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
And I'll refer back to town council just to get super clarity on this, but by application of the law, when it's illegal, it operates now lawfully. And by removing it, it still remains, well, it actually would change from a special permit use to a non-conforming.
Yeah.
But it still can operate the way it is. I'll just confirm it for clarity purposes. The intent's not to harm.
Has any of this been relayed to the owner?
I will, no, I don't think so.
By invitation to public meeting.
Well, that's true.
I mean, yeah, he didn't get a specific invitation, but he is, I will let him know specifically though. So as a courtesy.
Well, that's right. We just want to make sure that the language does not all of a sudden escort him out of town.
It's a good thing. He can stay here forever and he can't have competition. I
Right,
think you're improving his business.
right.
Which he did recently, by the way, as you know, I don't know, within the last 10 years, he expanded that station, redid it.
Around the backside.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
Through the
Peter
chair,
has a-
Walter, Peter Diamond.
Yeah, Peter.
So once you make it a non-conforming use, he could not expand it like he did a couple of years ago. You
Yeah.
can't expand
Yeah.
the use, just so you
Yeah.
know.
Well, he could expand through a non-conforming.
Special, he'd need a special permit from the ZBA to expand it,
Yeah, that's what I would.
but not as right?
No, right, not as a
Right.
right. It'd have to be a ZBA special permit.
What's the difference between this, Rich, and the auto dealership that seemed to be in effect for a very long time? or the ability to sell cars on the other side of town. Isn't this the same thing, that they didn't have that use for a long time, but it stayed with the property? Why is this different?
No, it still stays with,
Yeah.
which one you talking about, the auto?
Oh, it came up at the last meeting.
Across the street from Eagle Brook.
Oh, Eagle Brook, yeah, they went, so they weren't expanding it, they were just operating
Yeah.
under the original special permit.
Yeah, but it went back 20 years or something.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. So there is a special permit for this property, for the gas station. Well, I should back up, I guess, to see when this, I don't know. I have to double check and see when this gas station, I'm assuming it's pretty old, right?
I
So,
think Gary's point is there's another example in town where the zoning was changed and the use has continued
Yes.
perpetually.
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's, yeah. All right, I overcomplicated. Yes. Correct.
Rich, the other question I had was, how come some of the language in there is on all caps and others is not? Is there a reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so when you,
yeah.
yes, so when you see it, when things are in caps, that there is a defined definition for that
Yep,
within our.
that I understand.
Yep.
So
and-
so there's a definition somewhere for variety store?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
I was reading through it and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of definition. I mean, I get why it's in caps as a definition, but some of them didn't seem like they made sense, but okay.
So now I just want to give you a heads up. That's going away. Because.
What's going away? What's going away?
Yeah, so.
Definitions. We don't need definitions anymore.
No. Definitions will still be there, but in the future town meeting, we'll be coming back, recodifying the zoning bylaws. And the recommendation from the company who's working with the town clerk is that it's a little bit not as typical. You have your definitions, but you don't capitalize them. So anyway.
Okay.
Not to add more than you need to know, I guess. At the moment, but.
That's for another day.
Yeah, all right, but Rich, just keep in mind Peter Diamond's point here that if we do choose to put it in a prohibited category, it prevents him from expanding or redoing his property.
No.
Unless under special permit.
Okay, all right.
I mean, he would still have to expand through a special permit anyway, because that's the use. It's allowed by special permit. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Peter, you got your hand raised again on some other issue, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't see what reference in the zoning bylaw for the inclusionary zoning. Where would that end up? Because you didn't show that on the screen at all.
I zip by it. I'll go back. Oh, sorry, right here.
So it's an H.
Yeah, so H is the affordable housing.
H3B.
H3BD now.
Now, I just would suggest one more thing to add to that. If there's a fractions of 0.5 or larger, it shall be rounded off to a whole unit.
Round up.
In the calculation.
And the way this is written presently, we agreed, I believe, to change it based on what you said earlier, Peter. And now you're adding another clause, which I understand makes sense.
Yeah, so we would add that to the language. That we'd have to, well, we'd make both revisions and send them, we'd have to send it back
just asking the board to consider that, take a look at it. If someone
Yeah,
ended up at a fraction of 0.5 through 0.9, would add one more unit. If they ended up at a fraction of 0.4 or lower, then they stick with the number of units that they had calculated.
all right, well, let's take a second to consider that now rather than wait later. Gary, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Round up to the next full unit, sure.
Aaron,
Round up sounds good to me.
Chad,
I'm for rounding up, but do we want to limit it to a half a unit? Why not just, if it's a fractional, I mean, where's the cutoff, I guess? Is a half unit right, or do you
Oh,
just
half
round up everything?
half unit, it makes sense to me. I mean, you could even go to 0.6 and say, look, 0 to 5 is round down, and 6 and above, you round up.
I'm fine with the 0.5.
Okay. I can go with 0.5. All right, keep going, Rich. You were several pages down here.
It was actually at the end.
Oh, okay, since you put it that way.
So that's the,
All right, question. Last time we revisited this question, we came away with an answer, and I just want to make sure that we are still comfortable with that answer. And the question was, do we present these things one at a time or all in one swell swoop? And we came away with the understanding that we would present it as one package, right? Is that where we're still at?
Yes.
What happens if the package fails and we still have a requirement from the state to have a dense area near the center of town?
We form a new committee, and God bless them. They go off and try and figure it out.
Well, just based on the requirement that was being trickled down from the state for 15 unit density.
Yeah.
We're at 16 unit
We're-
density. If it got voted down for any reason, any one of the things that are attached to it, what's our recourse?
Well,
Or-
we're then in, again, I'll go with Kevin's comment that I'm not a interpreter of these things, but we would then be in non-compliance with the new law, and we would not be entitled to some of the benefits of the grants and things that the state, offers for things such as infrastructure improvements and the like.
But we wouldn't lose Josh.
Well, Josh is part of grant money, so
Yes.
that grant money might go away.
so I guess the one thought potentially, I know Josh is, as you said earlier, trying to seek some guidance on this to know. I think it's probably pretty clear, right? The density is a majority vote. But there are other changes within this suite of changes that I don't know if they would qualify. So Kevin, can we, when's the ultimate deadline, so to speak, to bundle, not bundle, I guess, for the warrant? I mean, there's time to make that decision, I would imagine.
Yes, we have time to make that decision. We have until beginning of March before you'd have to make that determination. Even I'm not sure if even after the warrant's closed, if you'd have to have that decision in place yet. But for safety's purposes, I would say by your next meeting, we should probably have a determination.
So Susan has her hands up. Maybe she can provide us a little more insight. Or maybe it's another topic. Susan?
Mute button.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Generally speaking, roughly 14 days before the warrant, before town meeting is when the warrant closes, because that's when it's printed. There is a lot of chances that you can change them on day of. You just have to print something up and do it that way. That it's happened before where things have been changed on town meeting floor. So just keep that in mind. But if you want it printed in the warrant that gets mailed to everyone, I believe it's 14 days prior. So just, that was a side note. That wasn't why I raised my hand. The reason I raised my hand is because, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years ago, when this similar changes to the B1 zoning issues came up, and it was sent as a complete package to the select board, and the select board asked you guys to separate it out into individual warrants. And then it came to the advisory board, and then most of them failed to pass through the advisory board. With that said, I believe the concern is if it's one warrant article and there is one aspect of that warrant article that people don't support, then they will vote no on the whole thing. And then you're back to square one. So you're the planning board, you get to do what you want. But my suggestion would be, especially for the things that are required due to state regulations, that you take them out and present them separately. I think you have a better chance of getting at least those things passed, because I'm not sure about the state regulations ones, but zoning changes need a 2/3 vote on town floor, correct?
Yep.
Let me ask you.
Correct.
No, that was.
Yeah. So I think there's always a really strong chance at town meeting that it's not going to, zoning changes aren't going to pass. Just my 2 cents.
Let me ask a question, a slight variation. So when we did the street acceptances, they were in one article, but each were voted on separately? Could they be in one article but voted separately so that you can discuss them kind of as a package, so to speak, or vote individually?
So street acceptances are not zoning bylaw changes. Zoning bylaw changes are different. And street acceptances, there's a separate motion for, there's a motion for the warrant article to move forward, but then there is a motion for each individual street. I do not believe you can do that for zoning bylaw changes, which is what this is. You can certainly present them as one article and it can be voted on together. You can't present them as one article and then break them out. If there's separate zoning bylaw changes, they have to be presented separately. And again, not trying to tell you what to do. I just would hate to see the aspects of this that absolutely need to be passed fail because they're grouped together. I understand wanting to keep a lot of the things together, like density and height and parking. So maybe if you really feel strongly that those should stay together, then you could have 2 or 3 and have the ones that need to be implemented due to state regulations separate, and then all of the other zoning bylaw changes together. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no.
Very quickly, just to tie that out. April 1st would probably be the date we'd have to know by, Rich, just so that we have the opportunity to be able to run the language through town council. So that's a little bit longer than I had originally quoted you. And then to Susan's question, Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the threshold now a 50% majority for zoning changes?
For an amendment to a zoning ordinance or bylaw to allow any of the following by right. So I'm just reading from it now. This is what the change was to 50%. So to allow by right multifamily housing or mixed use development in an eligible location. Or an amendment to increase the permissible density of a population or intensity of a particular use in proposed multifamily or mixed use development. So I think there are certainly portions of these amendments which would qualify as the 50%. There are other portions which are not as clearly spelled out in the legislative changes. I think that's one of the clarifications we're seeking. If this were a package, I think the assumption at this point is that the whole package would be a 50% vote because it includes the increase of density. If it's separated out, then it might be, some of it might be a 50%, some of it might be 2/3. It's unclear how that would work, given that this is the first town meeting that's going forward.
Josh, I think you would.
I don't want to package it and then you really need 2/3 and the other one was half.
Josh, I think you would. Yeah, I believe you would have to run that by the moderator and town council,
Yeah.
because I would
Yeah.
assume, I don't know, but I would assume that the threshold would be for the higher if you did them. So if you package them together and some of them are 50% and some of them are 2/3, and you package it as one warrant article, it would have to have 2/3 because of the aspect of the ones that require 2/3. You could not have them be less.
That's probably.
Whereas the one that is 50%, it would be fine, and it's anything over.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not the town council, so you would want to do that. I'm just speaking from my experience being on the advisory board and running town meeting for this, few years now.
We definitely want to, the goal would be to package if we can, but I think we need to be aware of that. We may have to make adjustments based on the voting requirements.
Yeah, that's what Susan just said. Sounds like it's right to me that we'd be stuck with 2/3, even if we bundle a whole bunch of 50%ers up in the one package. But who knows? I wonder if is Jay up to speed in all these new laws?
Sure he is. He's a visor.
Yes, yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to. We'll kind of, we got to sort that out a little bit and come back on that one. But I mean, the goal would be the bundle. But if
all right, let's see. Rich, we went through the language. There's two other things we need to talk about. One is what boards are we going in front of with our proposals? And two, how are we going to educate the citizenry prior to town meeting?
So we need to seek an invitation to the select board, the advisory board, and I know the advisory board will do their process of reviewing the bylaws as they normally would do, but I'd like to see if the advisory board would entertain, a meeting before they have to make a decision. The zoning board of appeals would be another board. I think the affordable housing trust, I think, will be another one to invite them. So maybe the option, you could have one meeting, invite them all, or individual. I guess that's what would be the,
Well, if I were one of the boards, I would certainly want an individual meeting. I wouldn't want to be part of a free-for-all with 5 or 6 boards there.
That's what I thought. Okay. So that would be the next step, to outreach to each of those chairpersons with the board, is get on their schedule to have the opportunity to go through this, make a presentation.
Well, Rich.
Yep.
Rich.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't set the agenda yet, so if you would like to go first. Yeah, if you would like to go first for the advisory board, you can present in the beginning, and then we can circle back with any question, if there are any questions that you need to have answered or we need to have answered, and we can circle back and vote towards the end. And our first meeting is March 17th. So if you'd like to be on the agenda for March 17th, you can.
Susan, do you serve green beer that day?
Oh, trust me, I heard it all when I scheduled the first meeting for St. Patrick's Day.
So. I take it where you are the chair of the advisory.
Yes.
Congratulations. All right, perfect. So there's one date. And I think so just looking at my calendar, the ZBA, I'll reach out to the chairman for the 24th of March.
Rich, if I might jump in here. I mean, this is the road we went down 2 years ago, right? It was a rough road.
No, not quite. This would be the planning board. And
It's the same basic process, right? We're trying to get in front of boards.
yeah,
Wouldn't it seem, I mean, I understand Walter's point where each board wants their shot to, to have a comments respective to their boards, but I'm just thinking this through, right? We're trying to have a public meeting, right? If we had the public meeting and invited all of the boards to that meeting to educate them to the proposals, and then had a follow-up meeting to discuss their comments on those proposals, wouldn't that seems a little bit more collaborative and out in front of things, right? Rather than having to make a detailed presentation 5 times. Right. I mean, you could make the detailed presentation to the public. Ideally, all the boards are there. You come to the individual board meetings, you make a summary presentation and you start the discussion. Right. I mean, if we have to make a full presentation to each board, I mean, this is now a half hour, 45-minute presentation, and you're into, I mean, if folks think that's the right way to do this, then so be it. But it seems like a long, laborious process to me. Which, and we have to meet with the public first anyway. So it seems like a potential path.
so the board, you will have to have a public hearing required, but also we have a public, quite honestly, I think it needs to be one-off meetings, because I think, first of all, I think it shows a lot more. And I know I'm speaking, it is a larger effort to meet on one-offs, one-on-one, but it certainly you can't say as if you didn't go, okay, so for example, the ZBA, and I know we have a representative on the committee, but the ZBA is invited to the larger public meeting and maybe 2 show up. Whereas if you have on their agenda, you have a one-on-one discussion, a presentation and discussion, they're at their meeting, there is no, it takes away the argument of, well, I didn't know about it, I didn't get to go. Well, we came to you, you came to them, had a one-on-one meeting on the topic. I don't know. I mean, it's.
Well, another consideration is that I think the public hearing really needs to be almost at the end of this process, because you really want to put out there what you're going to offer to the town meeting. And between now and then, there may be tweaks and bends and twists, depending on what the various boards have for comments and questions. It might cause us to back off and change this or change that or change the other thing.
Or maybe the boards are going to want to hear what the public had to say. Yeah, I don't know, but we got a month to figure it out. So,
Rich, Rich.
Yes.
I unplugged my phone, so hopefully I'm not on a delay anymore. The advisory board discussed it and it was approved for us. We're going to make the suggestion that not for all of them, but for some of them, especially the longer budget presentations, that we watch them prior, whether we get them from their presentation to the select board or each individual one records it and then sends it to us. And we watch them prior to the meeting, and then we're going to come prepared with questions to the meeting. I'm not sure if you will have presented yet, if you want to go in the beginning, but if you wanted to record it, instead of relying on the individual boards to show up to your one public meeting for everyone, you could record a presentation, send it to them. They could all watch it at their leisure if that's how their board votes to do it. And then when you come, you don't have to present. You can just go right into the question and answer portion.
I like that, actually.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah, that kind of accomplishes what Aaron was poking at.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, we could definitely do that. I think so that, okay. I think that's a really good idea. Okay. So we'll stick to, so I think then from the planning board, we need to have, just schedule a time to do. I'm assuming you want to do a presentation and then participation in the presentation to record it and then send it to the board, right? It's not just Josh making a presentation or I mean, there should be interaction with the board as well, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we have February 25th, we're gonna sewer meeting. Would that be too much to try to?
If only we recorded the meeting tonight.
There's still a few loose ends here, Aaron, that we may not want to show our dirty laundry to the rest of the world until we get.
Obviously, this is public and they can watch this meeting, of course, but we'd like to maybe be a little more polished, perhaps. I don't know.
Got a cable company, they can edit things together.
Yeah, they can trim it down
And-
to whatever you want.
I was going to say, and likely more concise since there was
Yeah.
2 hours of information before.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, no, I know. I don't want to. Okay.
All right, so we've got an outline of what we want to do with the boards, which is to follow Susan's suggestion, make a recording, send it to the boards, let them review it ahead of time, and then meet with them individually, get their questions okay. Now for the other issue, how do we educate the public?
Well, interesting enough, it could be done similarly in one respect. We'll hold a public. So I think we would just, similar to what we did with Southwood, I thought we could put a similar thing, push out a notice on the website.
Yep.
We did that then got pushed out to Facebook. I mean, that was extremely well attended.
Yeah, we had over 100 people there. Yeah.
So we could.
Again, if I can butt in, my suggestion to you would be to record a new presentation after you've met with all of the boards, just in case there are any changes that maybe doesn't have question and answers. It's just a presentation. And then you could, if it's on Zoom, you would present it, people could watch it. And then if you wanted to be there for questions, you could be, or it could just be an informational thing. And I would do it in the 2 weeks after the warrant has closed, but before town meeting, because you'll get your most buzz and generate your most interest in it versus months before.
Yep. Right.
Okay. All right. So we should just, so we have the 25th of February, we have the sewer meeting. I think we'll just put on there just afterwards, just kind of a recap on some of this stuff. How we want to.
Well, how long do you anticipate the sewer meeting to last?
Probably 45 minutes to an hour.
Call it an hour, huh? Okay. Yeah, I can piggyback on that, sure.
Yeah, just so we can, because the idea is we want to have this all produced by March 1, I would think.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a wrap.
Yeah, that's the wrap for B1, unless anyone's got any other points of discussion on the B1. Well, we got another visitor there, and Kevin's.
You got a dog now, huh? All right.
All right. Looking at the agenda for this evening, is there anything else that we have not covered, Rich? I think we've covered the waterfront.
You have.
There's one other point that you raised earlier in the day in a conversation with me, just to inform everybody on the board that we are in discussions with Pulte on Fox Run and about the drain lines, and we probably will have another session with them sometime in the near future.
Yeah, and And I'll be asking you for a special meeting to go over what we need to send to them too, so.
Yeah, a quick meeting to discuss it, yeah.
Were they scheduled to talk tonight and they didn't
No,
show up?
no, they weren't. No, they weren't.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, any other items of business for this evening? If not, I'd like to say thank you for the B1 committee for attending and appreciate it. And the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's see. All those in favor of adjournment, Mr. Peck,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.